Chapter 27. Carefully looking at the short Uchiha in front of him, Hyojin's thoughts suddenly diverged. Uchiha Jishue, a young man who affected Itachi's life and indirectly caused the extinction of the Uchiha clan. A young man who was full of reconciliation with the village but was ruthlessly betrayed and attacked by the Danzo. After losing a Manjikyu Sharingan, in order to avoid the escalation of the conflict between the clan and the village, he resolutely chose to commit suicide in silence. This Uchiha, whose talent may be above Itachi's, ended his short and brilliant life in an almost tragic way. It's really sad. Thinking of Jishue's future, Hyojin couldn't help but secretly sigh. Jishue's sad end is inseparable from his naivety. He shouldn't have exposed his Manjikyu Sharingan, let alone confess the dreaded Kodoeme Tsukumi Jutsu to the village's top leaders. Putting himself in Naruto's shoes, if there was a strong person who mastered Kodoeme Tsukumi Jutsu among the Uchiha clan who was planning the coup, Hyojin would not be at ease. Converging his divergent thoughts, Hyojin smiled and said, "I have heard a lot of legend about the Sharingan. I hope this time I can have the opportunity to fight with you and experience the power of the Sharingan firsthand." Jishue also smiled. "Compared with your Byakugan Kekkei Genkai, the Sharingan has no advantage, but I'm also looking forward to learning from you." After a few polite words, Jishue turned and left. Jishue is very clear about the current suspicion of the village towards Uchiha, so he keeps a certain distance from the ninjas in the village, not only to protect himself, but also to protect the ninjas in the village. Looking at the back of Jishue leaving, Hyojin sighed softly. The reason why Uchiha's coup seemed so ridiculous was because the three experts in their clan were either slacking off or rebelling. Not to mention Jishue and Itachi, the patriarch Uchiha Fuyue. This guy was completely coerced by the people to plan the coup. He didn't have a strong desire for a coup at all, so after discovering his son's rebellion, he directly gave up resistance and used his own life to fulfill Itachi's ninjutsu. In fact, if the Uchiha clan can work together, it is hard to say whether the coup will succeed or not, but it will definitely destroy Konoha. In fact, Jishue alone could wipe out the upper echelons of Mai with the help of BT Anshin. Just as Hyojin secretly sighed with emotion, Guy came over and whispered, "Hey, although this Jishue is very famous, he seems to be a very easy person to deal with. Uchiha seems to be very easy to get along with." Gunma coldly snorted. "That also depends on who it is. Kuroto is a member of the Hyuga family. Of course he will be polite. If it was you, he may not even pay attention to you." Asma also came over and said with a sullen face, "This guy is not simple. If you meet him during the assessment, you must be careful." Guy looked curious. "How strong is he?" "I heard that he has a record of killing 3 Jonin in the mist. He is recognized as a genius in the Uchiha clan." After a pause, Asma continued to explain, "I also heard from the old man that his strength is enough to be promoted to a Jonin. This time's Tokubetsu selection is just a formality." Everyone on the side was shocked. "What?" Looking at the surprised faces of everyone, Asma shrugged his shoulders. "What is there to be surprised about? You take a good look. Uchiha only sent him alone. This already explains the problem." As soon as he said this, everyone immediately paid attention to observe. They found that although the venue was crowded, there was really only one ninja wearing the Uchiha emblem, Uchiha Jishue. Suddenly, everyone's hearts sank. Asma obviously did not lie. One of the 15 or so promotion places has indeed been decided by Uchiha. Of course, in fact, it cannot be regarded as a decision, because with the strength of Jishue, it is easy to pass the selection. Such a decision instead restricts the Uchiha clan from sending more clansmen to compete for the quota. However, Kuroto noticed that he seemed to be the only Hyuga clan member participating in the assessment, so he thought in his heart, "Did the Hyuga clan reach some kind of deal with the village and decided to give me a spot?" Seeing Hyojin's expression changed a little, Asma winked and patted him on the shoulder. "Did you find out your Hyuga family must have also fought for a quota for you?" Hyojin crossed his arms over his chest and put on an unhappy expression. What an unnecessary move. Going through the back door, if he said that he was disgusted. It would seem too hypocritical, but in front of a group of students, he must show disdain for this privilege. As a teammate, Guy deeply agreed. Well, with Kuroto's strength, there will be no problem in this assessment. Everyone has also heard of Hyojin's recent achievements, and they know that his strength is indeed growing very fast. So they all nodded in agreement, and in everyone's mind, it is a matter of course for the children of the rich to have some privileges. Although they were surprised, it is not worth too much attention. At this time, the three generations appeared in the examination hall. The ninjas who participated in the assessment were all experienced ninjas, so there were no three generations? Gather? Are you stupid? G. Lacey G. says that Tomb Jiejia, the main purpose of this examination was to test one's combat strength. As long as one's combat strength was sufficient, or they had a specialty in a certain area that others could not hope to reach, then they would be able to pass the examination. Therefore, for Kekkei Genkai and secret jutsu ninjas, it is much easier to become a Tokubetsu Jonin than a commoner ninja. The rules of the assessment were to draw lots randomly. After the notary drew lots, Hyojin's first opponent was Sunset Red, who was in the same batch as him. Training ground number 9. With one hand on his waist, Hyojin said calmly, "Hong, your luck isn't very good." Red's face was a little gloomy. She didn't say anything and just stared at Hyojin as if she was looking for Hyojin's flaws. As a Jinjutsu ninja, encountering a Kekkei Genkai ninja is indeed tricky. It is well known that whether it is Byakugan or Sharingan, they have a certain degree of resistance to Jinjutsu. Although it is not 100% immune to Jinjutsu, the effect of ordinary Jinjutsu will inevitably be greatly reduced for these Kekkei Genkai ninjas. Hyojin is also very curious about the resistance of his Tenseigan to Jinjutsu, so he didn't rush to attack as he did in the past, but quietly waited for Hong to make a move. Hyojin's calmness gave Hong a great sense of oppression, making her faintly feel that something was wrong. Under the pressure of confrontation, Hong finally couldn't bear it. Magical Jinjutsu, Tree Bind Kill. As soon as Hong attacked, she used her best Jinjutsu, which is also one of the secret Jinjutsu of her family. Hyojin was in a trance for a moment, but he instantly calmed down as if nothing had happened. Chapter 28. From the feedback of chakra, Red clearly felt that Hyojin had cracked her Jinjutsu. This result shocked her to no end. According to common sense, even if the enemy can crack the Jinjutsu, it often takes a process to crack the Jinjutsu. This process can be done by mobilizing chakra to stimulate oneself or by self-harm. In short, the process of dispelling the Jinjutsu is almost indispensable. But Hyojin didn't do anything and broke her Jinjutsu, which somewhat subverted her understanding of Jinjutsu. Hyojin on the field also had some insights at this moment. There is no doubt that the Tenseigan has a strong resistance to Jinjutsu. If it is an ordinary Jinjutsu, he hardly needs to take the initiative to do anything, and the Tenseigan can passively remove the influence of the Jinjutsu on him. And the whole process happened in an instant. The sparring continued, and Hyojin suppressed the joy in his heart and said to Red, "I'll give you a piece of advice. Don't use Jinjutsu easily when you meet a strong pupil technique user." Red stared at Hyojin. "Why is my Jinjutsu ineffective? How did you do it?" Red's loud question attracted a lot of people's attention. Many Chunin ninjas who haven't had their turn to fight on the stage have cast their eyes over, watching the competition between Hyojin and Red. Seeing that there were a lot of people in the audience, Kuroto secretly thought that this was a good opportunity to establish the image of a strong person. So he said lightly, "For pupillary jutsu, ordinary Jinjutsu is meaningless. This is why I said you are unlucky before, because your Jinjutsu is useless against me." Red is not a person who easily admits defeat. She snorted coldly when she heard this, and immediately printed again and whispered, "Jinjutsu, Sanju Sakura." Huh. The number 9 practice field seemed to be blown by a breeze. The corner of Red's mouth slightly raised. You fell for it. After that, she lowered her figure, and her whole body rushed with the breeze toward Hyojin, who stood still. Hyojin, on the other hand, remained motionless, as if he had fallen into some kind of illusion and had lost all reaction to the outside world. But just when the crowd of Chunin who were watching the battle thought that Kurenai was about to succeed, Hyojin suddenly raised his right arm, without warning, and accurately blocked Kurenai's attack route. Red froze on the spot as her sure kill attack was blocked. Hyojin didn't even turn his head. He just turned around and kicked Red, who was still in a daze, away. It seems that you still don't understand. Interference illusions are also ineffective against me. Hyojin spoke very slowly and calmly, as if he was merely stating an obvious fact. She crawled up from the ground with a red face and asked in a daze, How? How could this be? Jinjutsu is the unique skill of the Kurenai family, and it has always been something that Kurenai has been proud of. But today, this pride was shattered in front of the truth. Not only Kurenai, but even many of the Chunin who were watching the battle were either shocked or surprised, and Uchiha Jishue, who had just defeated his opponent, also noticed this side. Hyojin knew that Kurenai lost her father in the Nine Tails Rebellion not long ago. He didn't want to provoke her too much, but on second thought, it is an unavoidable fact that ordinary Jinjutsu ninjas are weak in the face of strong Dojutsu Kekkei Genkai. It may not be a bad thing for Kurenai to realize this earlier. So, Hyojin still said in a cold tone, There will always be someone who will let you understand this. Instead of letting the enemy tell you, it is better to let me tell you. Kurenai looked at Hyojin. Can your eyes really see through everything? Hyojin shrugged and didn't answer. Then he remembered that Kurenai was easily beaten by Itachi, and kindly reminded, If you encounter a strong Dojutsu Kekkei Genkai, remember not to rely too much on Jinjutsu. Otherwise, the consequences will be unpredictable. Kurenai nodded solemnly, and then decisively chose to admit defeat. Although she lost this battle, it was not without gain for her. On the contrary, this battle made her realize her weakness and understand which kind of ninja is her natural enemy. On the viewing platform in the distance, 3 generations looked at this scene, pondered for a while, and immediately ordered the Umbu next to him. In the last round, arranged for Hyojin to fight with Uchiha Jishue. The Umbu on the side also seemed to be looking forward to the battle between the Sharingan and the Byakugan, so he nodded and said, Yes, I will arrange it. Not surprisingly, Hyojin won 2 rounds in a row and qualified to enter the final round of assessment. At this time, there are only 30 Chunin left in the venue. Among these 30 Chunin, only Guy, Asma, and Uchiha Jishue are familiar to Hyojin. As for the other students, they were all eliminated in the previous test. For Hyojin and Jishue's winning streak, Asma had already expected it, but he didn't expect that Guy, who has always been at the bottom, could also win 3 games in a row, so he said in surprise, Guy, you have made a lot of progress. Guy put on his signature pose, showing his big white teeth, and laughed. Why, I'm the dark blue beast of Konoha. Seeing the winners looking over, Asma waved his hand awkwardly. Don't look at me like that. I don't know him. I really don't know him. At this time, 3 generations walked over slowly with a pipe in his mouth. The group of Chunin hurriedly bowed to 3 generations. 3 generations laughed. You are the best Chunin in the village. As Naruto, I am proud of you. However, the number of Tokubetsu ninjas is limited. You still need to go through the final round of assessment. When everyone heard this, they sized each other up, and their expressions all became solemn at the same time. At this point in the selection, the remaining 30 people are almost the best of the Chunin, and no one dares to say that they can defeat each other, so this final round of assessment is bound to be a fierce confrontation. Ahem. After coughing twice, 3 generations announced. Let's start the last round of drawing lots. The result of the drawing of lots came out soon. The first match of the last round, Hyojin versus Uchiha Jishue. Hyojin was not surprised by the result of the drawing of lots. He never believed in the so-called drawing of lots. In his opinion, manipulating the results of the drawing of lots is a necessary means of every leader, and there is nothing to criticize. Jishue was just a little stunned, and then he calmed down. Unlike Hyojin and Jishue's calmness, The others immediately became very interested after seeing the result of the drawing of lots. As the two major pupil techniques in the village, which is stronger between Sharingan and Byakugan, has always been the topic of repeated discussion in the village, so the duel between Hyojin and Jishui is bound to be a hot topic. Without the need for anyone to urge him, Suijin leaped lightly and landed on the first training field. Chapter 29. Hyojin is in a good state of mind at the moment. In this situation, Jishui will definitely not use Manjikyu Sharingan and any pupil technique related to Manjikyu. Then, everyone will compete with basic skills. Hyojin has Chakra's amount that is better than Jishui, and he also has Tenseigan that has a strong resistance to Jinjutsu. He won't be at a disadvantage in terms of Taijutsu and Ninjutsu. Therefore, he has a good chance of winning this battle. Jishui slowly stepped onto the platform and bowed to Hyojin and replied, "Senpai, I will try my best." The battle begins. The referee issued the command to start the battle in a timely manner. As soon as the referee's voice fell, Hyojin and Jishui on the platform entered the battle state. Jishui was the first to attack. In less than 2 seconds, he has shot more than a dozen shurikens. Clang, clang, clang. These dozens of shurikens collided with each other in the air, changing their flight trajectories front, back, left, right, like a big net spreading out, covering the sky and covering the earth. Although he has seen Itachi's ninja tools, but looking at Jishui's ninja tool throwing, Hyojin can't help but be shocked. Whether it is the angle or the strength, it is impeccable. Even with Tenseigan, Hyojin can't see the flaws in it. He can only find a space to dodge by shooting ninja tools at each other. Restraining his impetuosity, Hyojin immediately found an opportunity and shot 8 shurikens. Ding, 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 ding. In an instant, the sound of shurikens intercepting each other resounded throughout the examination room. Looking at the dazzling ninja tool throwing battle on the stage, the Chunin ninjas watching the battle below the stage all held their breath. Those who can advance to this step can be regarded as good ninja tool throwers, so naturally they can see the intensity of the battle on the stage. Suddenly, Guy, who was in the crowd, exclaimed, "Look, the shurikens that were blocked by the mirror are moving again. It's steel wire." Jishui used specially processed steel wire to connect the shurikens. "If you don't look carefully, you won't notice it at all," Asmus said with a gloomy face. The exclamations below the stage did not affect Hyojin on stage. He has long known that Uchiha's ninja shuriken is very powerful. So how could he not pay attention to his opponent's second attack? So when he counterattacked, he had already deliberately attacked the wires connected to the shuriken. It's just that these steel wires have obviously been specially treated. Not only are they tough, but they also don't reflect light at all. Even with the Tenseigan, Hyojin can't find them one by one when moving at high speed. In addition, Jishui's technique was very experienced, so after a while, he still missed a few steel wires. The consequence of this mistake was that he quickly fell into a disadvantageous position. This is because of Hyojin's lack of throwing skills, and also because of his lack of preparation, because in just a moment of fighting, his ninja bag is already empty. Kuroto thought that Jishui's ninja tools were running out, but he didn't expect that Jishui took out a scroll at this time, unfolded it, and pressed it gently. Suddenly, countless shurikens popped out of the smoke. Connected by steel wires, these shurikens flew up and down in the air, as if they were alive. At first glance, Hyojin even thought that Jishui was controlling these shurikens with his mind. Seeing this scene, there was only one thought left in his mind. Ninja tools could be used like this? Below the stage, Asma shook his head and sighed. "I'm afraid Kuroto is going to lose. This Jishui is more difficult to deal with than I thought." Guy stared at the two people fighting on the stage and said without looking back, "Don't worry. This is just a warm-up. Kuroto didn't use his real skills at all." As Guy said, when he deeply realized that the gap between the two ninja tools can't be made up by the pupil power alone, Hyojin decisively gave up the entanglement of the ninja tools and rushed straight to Jishui. Taijutsu is where Hyojin's advantage lies. Seeing Hyojin rushing over aggressively, Jishui's fingers that controlled the steel wires danced gently, as if he was playing a famous song, and under his control, the countless shurikens flying around him immediately shot towards Hyojin. Revolving Sky. After a few months of training, Hyojin has become very skilled in the use of Revolving Sky, and he can launch it at any time, anywhere, and at will. Clang, clang, clang. Countless shurikens hit the sky and made a sound that hurt people's eardrums, and the shurikens that were bounced by Revolving Sky flew in all directions. Earth Release, Earth Flow Wall. 3 generations Naruto immediately used Earth Release and erected 4 earth walls on the edge of the training stage, blocking the shurikens that were bounced off by Revolving Sky. The Chunin who were watching the battle on the side also hurriedly retreated 10 meters. Among them, Asmo wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and muttered, "These 2 guys." Guy didn't seem to care and laughed. It's inevitable to take some risks to watch such an exciting battle. On the stage, with the opportunity bought by Revolving Sky, Hyojin finally got close to Jishui, only to see his palms together, and his whole body was like a fierce tiger released from the cage, unstoppable. Jishui was not afraid, and immediately pulled out the short sword on his back, and the 3 magatama in his eyes kept rotating. In an instant, the 2 were fighting, competing in taijutsu. After a while, a Chunin in the audience was surprised. Why are there taijutsu? Why is it so strange? Many of the Chunin who were watching the battle also nodded in agreement. Both Homusubi and Homusubi looked a bit weird in the middle of the fight. Their attacks were always abruptly stopped in the middle of launching, and often they would abruptly stop halfway through a palm strike, or abruptly change the direction of a sword strike. After fighting for a while, neither of them had a complete attack. Most of the time, they were alternating between attacking, changing, and forcefully stopping their attacks. Moreover, the speed at which they attacked and stopped their attacks was simply too fast, so in the eyes of the spectators, the battle between the 2 of them was full of strangeness. Guy, who was well-versed in the way of taijutsu, seemed to have become a different person at this moment, and explained in an unusually serious tone. "This is prediction. Both of them are constantly predicting each other's attacks. That's why it looks so strange." Asmus said with some disbelief. "So frequent prediction and adjustment. Isn't their insight a little too exaggerated? Are they still human?" Asma seemed to have asked the question that was in everyone's mind. Everyone had the same thought. Is it really possible that a Jutsu Kekai ninja can do whatever they want? The eyes of the 3 generations flashed, and no one knew what they were thinking. The Umbu, who was standing on the side, asked softly, "Naruto-sama, are they deliberately competing with each other's jutsu?" Chapter 30. Such a high-intensity contest of pupil power is not a small burden for both Hyojin and Jishui, so this kind of strange close combat is difficult to sustain for a long time. Hyojin gasped violently while supporting himself with one hand. At this moment, his whole body is extremely sore, and his legs and stomach have begun to tremble. If he didn't support himself with his hands, he wouldn't even be able to stabilize his body. This contest is not only a contest of pupil power, but also the control of their bodies. The change of moves in the slightest is a huge test for the muscles of the whole body, which puts the muscles all over his body under high pressure all the time. So even if it is just a moment of sparring, the intensity of the sparring is equal to that of sparring with Guy for an entire afternoon. On the other side, Shui was in an even worse state. He was sweating profusely and gasping for breath. He looked like he was out of strength. Jishui didn't care much about Itachi's praise of Hyojin before. This is not because he is arrogant, but because he is indeed qualified to look down on most of the so-called geniuses in the village. But after this contest, Kuroto finally realized how strong Kuroto's pupil power is. Kuroto never thought that he would be at a disadvantage in a contest of insight after awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan. Neither of them rushed to get up, but tacitly took a rest for a while. After a while, Hyojin calmed his breathing, stood up first, and said, "Let's continue." Jishui seems to have not recovered, but he still forced himself to stand up and nodded with a solemn expression. Sui Jin's body slightly crouched, and then with a fierce stomp of his foot, the two shurikens that fell beside his feet were shaken up, and immediately after that, he grabbed the shurikens in each hand and threw them towards Homusubi. At the same time, his figure flickered, and he followed the two shurikens and rushed toward Jishui. Jishui has suffered enough in the physical contest just now. At this moment, how can he let Hyojin get close to him easily? So he immediately printed and shouted, "Fire release! Great fireball technique!" In an instant, a huge flame spurted out from Jishui's mouth, almost covering the entire training platform. Seeing the overwhelming fireball rushing towards him, Hyojin had no way to avoid it, so he had to use revolving sky again. For a time, the sparring platform turned into a big stove with a fan. Sui Jin, who was in the center of the sparring platform, was like the fan in the stove, messing up Homusubi's fireball jutsu. The Chunin who were watching the battle around the training platform were in chaos again, trying to avoid the splashing flames, and even the three generations had to retreat for a while. On the platform, Hyojin, who was resisting the fireball technique, didn't feel good. Revolving sky is a defensive method against physical attacks, and its effect is greatly reduced in the face of ninjutsu. Therefore, although Hyojin blocked Jishui's fireball technique, his consumption of chakra is 3 times or even 4 times that of Jishui. Even if his chakra amount is higher than Jishui, this exchange ratio is unbearable for him. Fortunately, Sui Jin managed to block the great fireball, and by this time, he was already in front of Shui. Body flicker technique. Knowing how terrifying Hyojin was in close combat, Jishui couldn't care about his physical fatigue, and once again printed and used his trump card. Accompanied by Jishui's voice, more than a dozen Jishui appeared on the training platform like shadow clones. Hyojin immediately stopped his attack, and the breathtaking Tenseigan under the goggles glanced around, trying to find the real body of Jishui, but for some reason, every Jishui on the platform is like the real body, making it difficult for him to distinguish for a while. Hyojin doesn't know much about Jishui's body flicker technique, but he knows that Jishui has a title body flicker Jishui. Since she can use the word body flicker as a title, then Jishui's body flicker technique must have some skills. At this time, more than a dozen Jishui on the platform said in unison, "Kuroto Senpai, I'm going to attack." The voice came from all directions, making it difficult for Hyojin to distinguish. And as soon as Jishui's voice fell, a storm of attacks followed closely behind. Besieged by more than a dozen Jishui, Hyojin was in a difficult situation. Not only was he in a difficult situation, but he also quickly got a few more knife wounds on his body. As a last resort, he had to use revolving heaven again, barely blocking the siege of Jishui's body flicker technique. After winning a brief respite, Hyojin had a chance to observe Jishui's body flicker technique. Gradually, he was able to see some clues. Jishui's body flicker technique seems to create phantoms through ultra-high-speed movement, creating a scale of more than a dozen real bodies, making it difficult for the enemy to resist. Moreover, unlike Gai's fast movement, Jishui's body flicker technique is not a pure taijutsu technique, but similar to the soft fist technique of the Hyuga clan, it is a ninjutsu technique mixed with ninjutsu. Although it requires hand seals, the effect is better than Gai's fast movement, so much so that Hyojin, who has the Tenseigan, couldn't see through it at the first moment. But in the final analysis, Jishui's body flicker technique is also a taijutsu technique. As long as it is a taijutsu technique, except for a few abnormal forbidden techniques, Revolving Heaven can deal with most of them. After making up his mind, Hyojin simply stopped taking the initiative to attack and focused on defense. Even if it's chakra, he is not inferior to Jishui. After blocking a few more rounds of Homusubi's attacks, Sui Jin wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, "If that's all, then your body flicker technique won't be able to do anything to me." Jishui also noticed this and decisively stopped the body flicker technique, panting violently while saying, "Kuroto-san, I am not your opponent. I have lost this match." Hyojin was taken aback for a moment. He didn't expect Jishui to admit defeat so easily. Jishui smiled helplessly and explained, "My chakra is almost exhausted, but Kuroto-san seems to still have some energy left. If we continue to fight, I will definitely lose." Looking at Jishui's tired face, Hyojin suddenly had a realization. Although the awakening of the Manjikyu Sharingan is a qualitative improvement for Jishui, but this improvement is purely in terms of combat power. Not only did it not improve his physique, but it also increased the burden, which can be regarded as a certain degree of weakening. In addition, Jishui is still young, and his body has not yet fully developed, so the burden of the Manjikyu Sharingan is even heavier for him. In essence, the Manjikyu Sharingan is more like an abnormal mutation of the Kekkei Genkai, and its nature is unstable. Before being promoted to the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, it is a double-edged sword for any ninja. The more frequently it is used, the greater the harm to vision and body. This also explains why Danzo dared to attack Jishui. First, the burden of using the Manjikyu Sharingan is far greater than that of ordinary Sharingan, so Jishui will subconsciously avoid using the Manjikyu when fighting. Second, the Danzo used the name of the village to suppress Jishui, so Jishui did not dare to kill him. Chapter 31. Although he wasn't satisfied, Hyojin also knows that Jishui won't use the Manjikyu Sharingan on such an occasion, just like how he won't use the Rain Wheel or the 3 Generations Kazekage puppets. What's more, if Jishui really used a big move like Koto Amatsukami or Susanoo, Kuroto wouldn't be able to resist it, so he didn't worry about anything and calmly accepted the victory of this match. After getting off the practice platform, Guy and Asuma immediately surrounded Kuroto. Guy congratulated him happily. "Kuroto, congratulations!" After winning this round, Hyojin's promotion to Tokubetsu Jonin is almost certain, so Guy congratulated him in advance. Asuma glanced at Jishui in the distance and whispered to Hyojin, "This Jishui really deserves his reputation, except for you. I'm afraid that few people here can block his body flicker technique." Guy scratched his head and echoed, "Well, I thought about it for a long time, but I couldn't think of a way to break it. His body flicker technique is really too fast, and his swordsmanship is also very exquisite. I'm afraid I have to use Hashiman Tanku to compete with him." To some extent, Hyojin with the Tenseigan does somewhat restrain Uchiha Sharingan. First of all, the Tenseigan can be immune to most ordinary Jinjutsu. This alone can suppress many Uchiha who are good at Jinjutsu. Secondly, the powerful inside of the Tenseigan, coupled with the revolving heaven, makes him immune to almost all of the Uchiha clan's ninja throw, which is undoubtedly a great suppression for the Uchiha clan who are proficient in ninja throw. Finally, Hyojin's chakra's amount is also better than most Uchiha. In terms of tactical choice, he has a big advantage. Of course, this kind of suppression is limited to ordinary Uchiha. If he were to face an Uchiha shinobi who has opened the Manjikyu Sharingan, then it would be difficult to say whether Hyojin's Tenseigan would be able to resist the Manjikyu pupil technique. Seeing that Asuma and Guy were still racking their brains, trying to figure out how to break Jishui's teleportation technique, Hyojin shook his head and said with a smile, "Jishui is the #1 genius of Uchiha's generation. It's natural for him to have such strength. Don't worry too much." Asuma nodded, but his face was still gloomy. Guy laughed heartily and said, "Haha, I have one more goal to pursue." Asuma was speechless. What's there to be happy about? Guy patted Asuma's shoulder and smiled, revealing his white teeth. The hot-blooded competition between peers is the true youth. Asuma, don't fall behind. Fending off Guy's hand on his shoulder, Asuma looked at Hyojin, then glanced at Jishui in the distance, and finally stared at Guy. Fall behind? Humph, don't look down on me. After saying that, Asuma turned around and walked to the side angrily. Guy didn't care too much. He rubbed his palms together and looked around. He muttered, "When will it be my turn? I can't wait." After cleaning up the first training platform, the assessment continued. Guy and Asuma went up one after another and successfully defeated their opponents, each getting a precious promotion to Tokubetsu Jonin. After a series of battles, Soon 15 winners were born, and with the emergence of these winners, the promotion assessment of Tokubetsu Jonin was also announced to be over. In the end, because of his excellent performance as a loser, Uchiha Jishue also got an extra special place and was successfully promoted to Tokubetsu Jonin. For the decision of 3 generations Naruto, the Chunin who failed had no opinion, because everyone witnessed the fierce battle between Hyojin and Jishue with their own eyes, and they knew that Jishue did meet the standard for promotion to Tokubetsu Jonin. But his luck was not so good, and he drew a lot against Hyojin, who was stronger than him. After the assessment, 3 generations left Hyojin, Guy, Asuma, and Jishue. Sandaime-sama carefully looked at the 4 ninjas and then frankly issued an invitation. You are all excellent ninjas and the future Konoha. I hope that you can join the Umbu and become the cornerstone of the village's defense. Today's Mai is in urgent need of a new generation of strong ninjas, and the 4 people in front of him are the seedlings of 3 generations. In the face of the personal recruitment of 3 generations, Hyojin, Guy, and Jishue did not hesitate and agreed on the spot. And the most unexpected thing is that Asuma, as the son of 3 generations, clearly expressed his opposition. He crossed his arms over his chest and said, I don't want to be a sneaky guy. 3 generations suddenly frowned. What nonsense are you talking about? Asuma, who is in the rebellious stage, is not afraid of 3 generations. He glanced coldly at Hyojin, Guy, and Jishue, and then shouted at 3 generations, I will prove to you that I am not worse than the others. Without waiting for anyone to react, Asuma shook his head and left. Asuma is very sensitive. In these few rounds of competition, the opponents in each round are just a little weaker than him, which makes him faintly feel that there is something fishy in this Tokubetsu Jonin selection. His self-esteem cannot let him accept these goodwill that has long been arranged by 3 generations. And he knows that he is indeed not the opponent of Hyojin and Jishue at the moment, and even Guy, he is not sure that he can win, so he can only choose to leave in a huff. After Asuma's disturbance, 3 generations have no interest in saying anything more, and after a simple explanation to Hyojin and the other 2 about joining the Umbu, they also turned and left. Hyojin, who was tired, refused Guy's proposal to celebrate and returned home alone. But as soon as he entered the house, he found that the one-eyed viper was coiled in the corner of the room, hissing and spitting its tongue. After taking the note from the mouth of the one-eyed viper and looking at it, Hyojin burned the note and immediately changed into ordinary clothes and went to a wine house in the village alone. Going up to the 2nd floor and walking into a single room, Hyojin said to Orochimaru, who was drinking by himself, Orochimaru, Sama, why did you sneak into the village? This is very dangerous. Dangerous? Orochimaru smiled sinisterly. Yandame-san and the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki are no longer here, and the old man is busy with many things. The village is far less dangerous than it seems. Indeed, as Orochimaru said, there are not many Kaga-level masters among today, especially after losing 4 generations. There are very few masters who can threaten Orochimaru. And whether it is 3 generations or Jiraiya, even if they meet Orochimaru 8 or 9 out of 10 out of 10, they are not willing to kill. Therefore, although Mai seems to be heavily guarded, for Orochimaru, who is familiar with the village, it is not a forbidden area that cannot be set foot in. Secretly resisting the oppressive feeling of Orochimaru, Hyojin asked calmly, Then what do you want me to do? Chapter 32. Hyojin's face changed when he heard this, but he quickly returned to normal and replied respectfully, The assessment went smoothly, and the 3 generations have arranged for me to enter the Umbu. He had just finished the Tokubetsu Jonin assessment, and Orochimaru already knew about it, which somewhat surprised Kuroto. Obviously, Orochimaru had more than one spy planted in the village. Orochimaru put down his glass, stared at Hyojin with a cold expression, and asked, Kuroto, your recent growth is somewhat beyond my expectations. Is there any secret, or has the research of Byakugan yielded results? Hyojin's recent improvement in strength was very significant. Those who didn't know him might think that it was just a normal awakening of his bloodline. After all, Hyojin was in the age of rapid improvement in strength. For example, Guy, Asma, and others, their strength was also rapidly improving during this period. It could be said that there was a change every day. But Orochimaru was different. He knew Hyojin very well and knew that Hyojin was not a talented ninja. So Hyojin's recent performance aroused his suspicion. Hyojin naturally wouldn't admit anything. He shook his head and said, "The research of Kekkei Genkai is not something that can be done overnight. You should know this better than me." Orochimaru narrowed his eyes and said, "Is that so?" Orochimaru knew that Hyojin had only participated in the research for a few years, and it was impossible to produce results in such a short time. Moreover, he had also checked Hyojin's laboratory, which was full of the most basic genetic testing data, and there was no part involving live experiments at all. Think about it. There was no live experiment, let alone the results. Of course, Orochimaru didn't know that Hyojin had actually done a live experiment, and the subject of the experiment was himself, so naturally there was no relevant experimental data. After a while, Orochimaru smiled and said, "It seems that I was wrong before. Not only do you have the potential to become a researcher, but you also have the potential to become an excellent ninja. Thank you for your compliment." As if suddenly remembering something, Orochimaru smiled and said, "I met an interesting guy recently. He asked me about you." "Who?" "The red sand scorpion of the Sand Crypsis." Orochimaru stared at Hyojin and asked word by word, "You've seen it before?" Hyojin nodded calmly. "We did meet once." Obviously, during this time, Sasori and Orochimaru have joined Akatsuki, and Orochimaru is one of Mai's Sannin. So it is natural for Sasori to inquire about Hyojin's information from him. For this, Hyojin had expected it, so he did not show a surprised expression. Seeing that Hyojin's expression was the same as before, Orochimaru went on to say, "He seems to want to kill you. How did you provoke him?" Hyojin believed that with Sasori's pride, he would not tell Orochimaru in detail about his defeat, so he briefly talked about Mai's action to clean him up, only omitting the accidental capture of the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets. After that, Hyojin smiled and said, "A small person like me escaped from his hands. Maybe it made him feel very ashamed." Hearing this, Orochimaru let out a rare laugh. What Hyojin didn't know was that although Orochimaru and Sasori temporarily formed a 2-person team, they didn't get along well. Both of them were obsessed with immortality. One of them walked the path of biotechnology, while the other walked the path of mechanical technology. Both of them had touched the threshold of immortality in their respective fields. One could imagine how sharp the difference in their views on science was. After laughing for a while, Orochimaru said, "Although I didn't tell him about you, he must have other sources of information. So you have to be careful. He's a paranoid guy, and I don't want to see you among the puppets in his collection." Kuroto nodded. Hyojin immediately smiled bitterly. It's really not a pleasant experience to be hated by such a strong person. Uchiha Clanland. Seeing Jishue's figure, Itachi, who was wandering on the side of the road, hurriedly greeted him. "Brother Jishue, did the assessment go well?" Jishue stroked Itachi's head. "Well, it went well. So, Brother Jishue, you're already a Tokubetsu Jonin?" Itachi was overjoyed when he heard this, and immediately asked, "What is the content of the assessment? Tell me quickly." Jishue immediately talked about the interesting things during the Tokubetsu Jonin assessment. Itachi listened carefully for a while and suddenly asked, "Brother Jishue must have easily defeated all the opponents, right?" Jishue's face stiffened, and then he shook his head gently. "In the last round of the test, I lost to my opponent, but Naruto-sama felt that my performance was excellent, and in the end he allowed me to be promoted to Tokubetsu Jonin." Itachi was shocked. "Lost? How is this possible?" Jishue's title as the first genius of Uchiha was not boasted by Uchiha behind closed doors, but was supported by his achievements. Jishue had the strength of a Tokubetsu Jonin, which has long been recognized in the Uchiha clan, so Itachi did not expect that in this Tokubetsu Jonin assessment, someone could defeat Jishue. I didn't think I would lose. With a helpless smile, Ji Shui continued. The person who defeated me, you also know, is Kuroto Senpai of the Hyuga family. Itachi suddenly understood. Kuroto Senpai. Since young, Itachi had a sharpness far beyond that of ordinary people. He was good at observing and could always find details that others could not notice. Because of this, when he encountered the Jinchuriki of Nibi of Cloud Village last time, he was keenly aware that Hyojin was not too afraid of the opponent. At that moment, he guessed that Hyojin was by no means an ordinary Chunin. Ji Shui said seriously at this time, Itachi, there are endless strong people in the village. We can't be blinded by the power of the Sharingan. We must always be humble. Itachi didn't really understand, but he still nodded seriously. Looking at the clansmen coming and going in the distance, Ji Shui asked in a low mood, What do you see in them? Itachi carefully observed for a while and said, Pride. Yes, they are proud to be born in the Uchiha clan. After a pause, Ji Shui then said in a deep voice, But this pride is too much that we can't bear it. In the previous battle with Hyojin, not only did Ji Shui not use the ability of the Manjikyu Sharingan, he even reserved some of his conventional means. And the reason why he did this is not only because he was aware of the village's suspicion of Uchiha, but also because he clearly felt the undercurrent within the Uchiha clan. The matter of the village's great loss of vitality is known even to the other shinobi villages, not to mention the Uchiha clan living in the village. There has never been a lack of ambitious people in the Uchiha clan, but there were too many strong people in the village, such as Sannin, for generations, Nine-Tailed Jinchuriki, and so on, so the Uchiha clan could only choose to stay dormant. But now there's only one Jiraiya left in the Sannin, and he is not in the village most of the time. 4 generations and Nine-Tailed Jinchuriki have also died in the battle. In the village, only the Sannin and Danzo can make the Uchiha clan feel afraid, so the ambition of many people in the Uchiha clan broke out uncontrollably. Chapter 33. Ji Shui's sigh made Itachi fall into contemplation. He was naturally aware of the undercurrents surging within the family. At a young age, he could already vaguely feel the contradiction between the family and the village, but he could do nothing about it. After pondering for a moment, Itachi said, Brother Ji Shui, if the news that you lost to Senior Kuroto spreads, I'm afraid it was not an accident that the Uchiha clan was excluded by the village. It could be said that most of the Uchiha were not very likable. The main reason for all this was that once the Uchiha people opened their eyes, their strength would advance by leaps and bounds with the awakening of their bloodline. It was almost inevitable that they would eventually grow into Jonin. He didn't need to put in too much effort to master the power that was above others. Over time, it was inevitable that he would develop a sense of superiority over others. Therefore, Itachi was very worried that after the news of Ji Shui's defeat to Hyojin spread, those unruly masters in the clan would go to trouble Hyojin. This was not unprecedented. Ji Shui smiled and said, I know what you were worried about, but you can rest assured that Senior Kuroto is stronger than you think. Itachi immediately understood Ji Shui's intention, so he was more curious about the contest between Ji Shui and Hyojin. He hurriedly asked, Tell me about the contest between you and Senior Kuroto. Ji Shui recalled the previous contest with Hyojin and said slowly, I didn't expect that Senior Kuroto, who had been unknown before, had eyes above me. Alas, every time I think that such a genius is so low-key, I am promoted as the first genius of the family and enjoy the envy and admiration of my companions in the village. I feel a little ashamed. After shaking her head and sighing, Ji Shui described the process of the contest. Illusion and physical skills can't do anything to Senior Kuroto. After lowering his head and muttering to himself for a while, Itachi said again, Senior Kuroto's strength is so strong. It seems that I worry too much. Ji Shui recalled something at this moment and said, I always have a feeling. Itachi asked, What feeling? Senior Jing seems to know that I didn't use my full strength. He seems to... Jishue wanted to say that Hyojin seems to have sensed that he has the Manjikyu Sharingan, but he quickly shook his head and drove this absurd idea out of his mind. Currently, only he and Itachi know that he has awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan in the entire village, and he believed that Itachi will not reveal this secret. Second floor of the izakaya. After talking about scorpions, Hyojin thought for a moment and asked tentatively, Orochimaru, Sama, do you know anything about tail beasts? Orochimaru was surprised. You're interested in tail beasts? Is it because of the Jinchuriki of Nibi? Hyojin didn't hide it and nodded naturally. Due to my lack of talent, my chakra's amount has never been sufficient. In order to solve this problem, I have read a lot of books and materials, but the answers I got all pointed to tailed beasts. Orochimaru chuckled. You and I are the same. We will do whatever it takes to get the answer, but I will give you a suggestion. Don't touch tailed beasts. They're more troublesome than you think. Hyojin quickly said, tailed beasts are taboo in the 5 great shinobi villages. Of course, I won't overestimate my ability to touch them. My idea is it possible to create a small tailed beast? Immediately afterward, Hyojin told Orochimaru about the idea of creating an artificial tailed beast. With the current level of Hyojin's technology, it is impossible to create an artificial tailed beast. If he wants to make an artificial tailed beast like the Zero Tail appear in advance, then he must rely on the power of Orochimaru. Surprised by Hyojin's idea, Orochimaru was slightly startled and immediately said in a hoarse voice, Kuroto, you are really different from others, a person full of ideas. Hyojin looked at Orochimaru expectantly. Is it possible for my idea to be realized? After thinking for a long time, Orochimaru said in a deep voice, in fact, the village has been researching tailed beasts since the beginning of the first Sama, and until the second Sama came to power, the tailed beast research project has always existed. But later, for some reason, the project was suddenly suspended, all the information was sealed, and the tailed beast research project was completely suspended. Hearing this, Hyojin thought in his heart, the village has really studied tailed beasts. In fact, after meeting Shino, Kuroto has been analyzing which village Shino stole the technology to create the Zero Tail from. Among the 5 great shinobi villages, the political situation of Mist and San Crypsis has always been unstable, and their strength is also relatively weak, so they have no ability to carry out in-depth research on tailed beasts, so these 2 villages were first excluded. Although Rock and Cloud are strong, Rock focuses on the research of Earth Release, while Cloud focuses on the development of Lightning Release and Taijutsu. Both of them seem to have no achievements in the research of tailed beasts. Therefore, after a round of comparison, Mai, who has the first Sama Naruto, who can completely suppress the tailed beasts, seems to be the village that has the real ability to deeply study tailed beasts. Converging his divergent thoughts, Hyojin asked in a timely manner, why did the project stop? Orochimaru replied, I don't know the specific reason, but according to my speculation, it may be because of instability. I have read some information, and the probability of an artificial tailed beast going berserk is very high, and once it goes berserk, it will be a complete disaster. Hyojin once again proposed an idea. If we abandon the offensive ability of the artificial tailed beast and only use it as a battery, can we improve its stability? Orochimaru glanced at Hyojin and said in a guiding tone, a large number of chakra gathered together is essentially a destructive force, and there is no such thing as abandoning offensive ability. In the early years, I made a similar idea, and if you want to improve the stability, there's only one way, and that is to supply the artificial tailed beast with chakra, and the chakra attribute cannot be too violent. Hyojin frowned. Besides the tailed beast, who has the ability to supply the artificial tailed beast with chakra? Yes, in the shinobi world, perhaps only the first Sama has the ability to supply the artificial tailed beast with chakra. Others, including the second Sama, I am afraid that no one else has this ability. After a pause, Orochimaru continued, And if we use the violent chakra attribute of the tailed beast as the chakra source of the artificial tailed beast, I'm afraid that the artificial tailed beast will immediately go berserk. So I guess this is the reason why the artificial tailed beast project was discontinued. Hyojin tried to recall everything from his previous life, hoping to find the answer to this seemingly unsolvable problem. In the vague memory of his previous life, there are many people who have a large number of chakra, but all of them are strong people who stand at the peak of the shinobi world, and none of them are willing to work for Hyojin as a coolie to supply chakra. Excluding these strong people, Hyojin vaguely remembered two mysterious places with a large number of chakra. Chapter 34. Hyojin wanted to tell Orochimaru about the dragon vein and Morio, but considering that it would be difficult to explain how he knew these secrets, Hyojin hesitated for a moment. But in the end, he did not say anything. And looking at Orochimaru's expression, he did not seem to be interested in artificial tailed beasts. But this is also normal for Orochimaru, who has mastered secret techniques, such as Yamada no Jutsu, physical regeneration, and other secret techniques, and is developing undead reincarnation. Chakra is not a problem at all. After weighing for a moment, Hyojin asked, Orochimaru-sama, what price do I have to pay to get information about artificial tailed beasts from you? Orochimaru looked at Hyojin with interest. I'm very curious. Why are you so obsessed with artificial tailed beasts? Is there any other reason? Hyojin asked back. Then why are you so obsessed with forbidden techniques? I'm the same kind of person as you. In terms of research, I don't need a reason. I just need interest. This explanation cannot convince me. After shaking his head, Orochimaru suddenly smiled. Well, I also want to see what kind of monster you can make. Hyojin heard this and was overjoyed. You agree? Orochimaru stretched out two fingers. I will give you all the information, but I have two conditions. Please tell me. Orochimaru smiled and said, First, the research results must be shared with me. Second, I want you to collect information about all the members of the Umbu, including the old man's shadow guards. Hyojin, who had no room to bargain, could only nod and agree. At night, Hyojin got all the information about artificial tailed beasts from the one-eyed snake. From this, it could be inferred that Orochimaru had stolen most of the forbidden arts and research materials in the village before he defected. This might be one of the reasons why the leaders of the village carried out a bloody purge on Orochimaru's former subordinates. Hyojin opened the scroll that recorded the experiment data of the artificial tailed beast. He took a quick glance at it and frowned. The complexity of the artificial tailed beast is far beyond his previous expectations. There are more than 700 kinds of complicated techniques, many of which are so complicated that even a jonin would find it difficult to use them. In addition, artificial tailed beasts also had high requirements for their shells. According to the information recorded in the scroll, the village had experimented with 17 kinds of high-strength materials, and the result was that only a material called purple clay glue could barely withstand a huge amount of chakra. The purple mud rubber was a specialty of the swamp country. It was a type of rubber mud that was located in the deepest part of the swamp. Because of this, the purple mud rubber was difficult to mine, and its production was scarce. Its price on the market was almost equivalent to gold. It was a very rare and expensive material. He thought that the huge amount of chakra would be a problem to make an artificial tailed beast, but after reading the information, Hyojin knew that almost everything from the techniques to the materials of the shell was a problem. No wonder Shino, who controls the remaining forces of the shinobi village, could only make a nondescript zero-tailed beast after so many years. After sighing softly, Hyojin put away the scroll. At the moment, whether it was technical reserves or material reserves, Hyojin was far from enough, so in a short time, he was unable to start the artificial tailed beast project. Early the next morning, Hyojin rushed to the reporting place of the Umbu. After changing to a new ninja ID, he officially became a special jonin in the My Village. At the same time, he also officially joined the Umbu directly under Naruto. In the equipment warehouse, Hyojin met Guy and Jishui. After greeting each other, The three of them carefully selected the equipment. In front of the mask rack, Hyojin took a fancy to an eagle mask. He tried it on his face and felt that it was just right, so he chose this mask. Kia chose an ordinary dog mask. Jishui hesitated for a long time between the fox mask and the cat mask, and finally gave up the fox mask that looked too cunning and chose the relatively docile cat mask. Naruto's office. Hyojin, Guy, and Jishui, who had changed into the Umbu uniform, stood straight in front of Naruto's desk. The three generations carefully looked up and down at the three of them, nodded with satisfaction, and said, "Good. You are all very energetic. From now on, you'll be added as the 11th squad of the Umbu." After that, the three generations clapped their hands gently. A figure landed next to the three of them. The three generations introduced, "This is Kakashi. He will be the captain of the 11th squad." Kakashi took off the fox mask on his face and said indifferently to the three of them, "I am Kakashi. Please take care of me." Hyojin and the other two also took off their masks and politely returned the greeting to Kakashi. There's a very difficult task at the moment. Knocking the pipe on the table, the three generations continued. "A few days ago, the Miko of the Land of Demons sent a request to my village, hoping that we can send people to help them seal the foreign demon that threatens the shinobi world. This will be your first task after joining the Umbu. The task rank is S." Hyojin's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. Yesterday, he just thought of the demon Morio, and today, the three generations assigned him the task of sealing the demon. He doesn't know whether this is a coincidence or the village is aware of something. At this time, the three generations stood up, turned around, and looked at the village outside the window and said, "We don't know the details of this task, so you must hurry to the Land of Demons as soon as possible and meet with the Miko of the Land of Demons. The Land of Demons may have also sent a request to other shinobi villages, so you may encounter ninjas from other villages in this task. You must pay attention and try not to conflict with the ninjas of other villages." The four of them said in unison, "Yes." Time is tight, and the task is urgent. The four of them didn't dare to delay, and after leaving the Naruto office, they directly left the village and rushed to the Land of Demons. After leaving the village, the guy excitedly said to Kakashi, "Kakashi, I'm also a Jonin. I finally caught up with you." Kakashi responded weakly, "Yes, yes, yes." The guy didn't notice Kakashi's impatience at all and continued to say happily, "Kakashi, chasing each other like this is the real youth. When I think of this, I feel full of energy." Kakashi turned his head and glanced at Hyojin and Jishui, who were slightly behind the team. And at the same time, he continued to respond to the guy, "Yes, yes, yes." The second half of the team. Noticing that Hyojin seemed to be a little restless, Jishui asked curiously, "What's wrong, senpai?" Hyojin shook his head. "It's nothing." At this time, Hyojin was indeed a little suspicious. Yesterday, he met with Orochimaru and mentioned about the chakra source, and today he was sent to participate in the task of sealing the Morio. It's really too much of a coincidence. Chapter 35. In his memory, the time when the Morio demon would wreak havoc in the world would be the same as now, but this kind of coincidence made the always cautious Hyojin feel a little uneasy. Seeing that Hyojin was still in a daze, Jishui asked, "Senpai, what do you think about this mission?" Hyojin, who was thinking about something, replied casually, "The Land of Demons is sandwiched between the Land of Wind and the Land of Earth, and this matter also involves a foreign demon. So the Miko will definitely ask for help from the Sandcrypsis and the Rock Village, so this mission will inevitably involve many shinobi villages. In short, it will be very troublesome." Jishui was a little curious. "I don't know what kind of monster that foreign demon is." Hyojin thought for a moment and decided to reveal some information he knew to his teammates. So he said, "According to my speculation, that demon is at least tailed beast level. Otherwise, Naruto-sama would not have classified this mission as S-class. Tailed beast level." After a moment of silence, Jishui suddenly lowered his voice and whispered, "Senpai, I have a technique that can temporarily fight against tailed beasts, but after using it, I basically lose my combat effectiveness." Not expecting Jishui to reveal such a secret to him, Hyojin was startled and immediately said, "During yesterday's competition, I already felt that your Sharingan is different from ordinary Sharingan." Shursui wanted to say something, but hesitated, as if he wanted to say something, but he had some misgivings. Hyojin smiled and said, "You don't need to explain to me. Everyone has a secret. As long as you don't harm the village, I won't reveal your secret to anyone." Jishui breathed a sigh of relief and said sincerely, "Thank you." Waving his hand, Hyojin said indifferently, "Actually, I also have a secret. I have a technique that can also temporarily fight against tailed beasts." Hyojin is not talking nonsense. The 3 generations Kazekage, known as the strongest Kazekage, has the ability to suppress the tailed guardian crane. Now that the 3 generations Kazekage puppets are in his hands, he naturally has the strength to contend against the tailed beast for a short time. Jishui smiled and said, "As expected, I also felt that you didn't use your full strength yesterday." Sharing secrets was undoubtedly one of the best ways to get closer to each other. After just a few words, the relationship between Hyojin and Jishui was obviously much closer. Of course, this is also related to the fact that both of them are from rich and powerful families, and both of them possess dojutsu Kekkei Genkai. At the front of the group, Kakashi, who was looking back, turned his head back and said to Guy, "Kuroto seems to have become a lot stronger." Kai laughed and said, "You're talking about Jing? He's a genius that's not inferior to you." Yes. Kakashi nodded his head again and didn't say anything more. After his father's suicide, his best friend, and his sensei died one after another, Kakashi became depressed and indifferent, and only occasionally when he was with his peers, he would say a few words. The 4 members of Team 11 are the best of the new generation of Konoha, so their speed is naturally very fast. In just a week, they crossed the border and entered the land of rain. But the rain is still falling. So, the 4 of them are not far from Konoha. In a cave, the 4 of them were warming themselves by the fire while studying the next route. Between the land of demons and the land of fire, there are several small countries, such as the land of rain, the land of birds, and the land of bears. At present, there are a large number of wandering ninjas in these small countries. If they are not careful, they may encounter a fierce battle, so the choice of route must be very careful. After some discussion, Kakashi, who had determined the route, put away the map. At this time, Guy complained in a low voice, "The weather in the land of rain is really bad. It rains all day long, making people feel sticky." As the captain, Kakashi dutifully said, "Although the land of rain is small, it is also a country with many shinobi villages, and the man known as Demigod is the leader of the rain village here, so we have to be extra careful here." Guy and Jishui nodded. Hanzo is a famous figure in the shinobi world, and the name of Mai Sanin came from him. Hyojin leaned against a dry cave wall and secretly pondered, calculating the time. Hanzo should have been killed by Nagato by now, right? Sasori and Orochimaru joined the Akatsuki one after another, which means that the Akatsuki has transitioned from the period of Yahiko to the period of Nagato. In Hyojin's impression, after Nagato became the leader of the Akatsuki, the first thing he did was to avenge Yahiko, kill Hanzo, and secretly control the entire land of rain. With the death of Yahiko, there is no boundary between good and evil in Nagato's heart. Compared with the Morio that ravaged the land of demons, the current Akatsuki is the real monster that has the ability to destroy the shinobi world. Thinking of Hanzo, a powerful shinobi known as Demigod, died so quietly, Hyojin couldn't help but sigh. The shinobi world is really dangerous. After passing through the land of rain, Class 11 smoothly passed through the land of birds and the land of bears. They thought that everything was going smoothly, and they would soon be able to see the Miko of the land of demons. But they never thought that as soon as they stepped into the territory of the land of demons, they would encounter trouble. Boom! Smoke and dust filled the sky, accompanied by a loud noise, slowly rose. Guy suddenly retreated, panting as he shouted, "Damn it! These monsters can't be killed at all." At this time, in front of the 4 people of Class 11, there's a group of burly stone terracotta soldiers. These terracotta soldiers are supposed to be lifeless, but as if they are alive, they lined up in a formation, and as soon as they saw them, they rushed towards them aggressively, as if they have a deep hatred towards them. Kakashi used Chidori to kill a few of them, and Guy also used Taijutsu to break a few, but in the blink of an eye, those crushed terracotta soldiers stood up again. Seeing another broken terracotta soldiers restored to its original state, Kakashi frowned. They really seem to have immortal bodies. Hyojin doesn't know much about these terracotta soldiers, but anyone with a discerning eye can see that they are just a bunch of puppets without souls. So he suggested, there's no need to waste time on these puppets. Let's see the Miko first. With regards to the current situation of the Land of Demons, the members of Class 11 were completely clueless about it. So they all agreed with Suijin's proposal, bypassing the slow terracotta soldiers and hurrying towards the hinterland of the Land of Demons. Along the way, all they saw and heard were terracotta soldiers wreaking havoc. Not to mention the small villages, even the markets and some towns were affected. The number of civilian casualties was so heavy that even the 4 people of Class 11, who had just experienced a war, couldn't help but feel a little scared. Although they couldn't bear it, the 4 of them were clear in their hearts. Instead of wasting time dealing with these terracotta soldiers along the way, it is better to meet up with the Miko as soon as possible and defeat the monster behind the scenes. Otherwise, the number of casualties will only increase. Chapter 36. On a high cliff, the 4 members of Team 11 were either squatting or standing on the edge of the cliff, looking at the towering palace in the distance. The Miko's palace is currently protected by a thin layer of enchantment. The surrounding terracotta puppets seem to be unable to enter the enchantment and can only surround the palace in layers. Seeing this scene, Kakashi breathed a long sigh of relief. It seems that the Miko's palace hasn't fallen yet. We still have a chance. Guy anxiously said, but there are so many terracotta puppets outside. How are we going to get in? Kakashi turned to Hyojin and asked, Kuroto, can you find a way to enter the palace? Hyojin shook his head. He has already observed that the Miko's palace has been surrounded by the terracotta puppets from all directions, leaving no gaps or blind spots. Jishui said solemnly, it seems that we can only break in by force. Breaking in by force is obviously not an easy thing to do. Team 11 has already dealt with these terracotta puppets many times before. Although these terracotta puppets are extremely clumsy, each of them is extremely powerful, and once they form a formation, it will be very difficult to deal with them. Hyojin, who was observing the surroundings, suddenly pointed to a high cliff on the opposite side. Look over there. Everyone looked over and saw a few figures appear on the opposite high cliff. Looking at their clothes, they seemed to be ninjas from the Sand Crypsis. As the team leader, Kakashi pondered for a moment and said, they should be the ninjas sent by the Sand Crypsis as reinforcements. We may be able to cooperate with them to break through the encirclement of the terracotta puppets and enter the Miko's palace. The current enemy is the foreign monsters, so in this crisis, everyone is not against cooperating with the Sand Crypsis and nodded in agreement to Kakashi's proposal. Soon, the 2 sides met up. The Sand Crypsis also sent a 4-man team to support the Miko-sama, led by a ninja named Hakura, whose reputation is second only to the 4 generations of Kazekage in the Sand Crypsis. Kakashi went up and talked with Hakura for a while, and they reached an agreement. At the forefront of the assault, the 2 captains, Kakashi and Hakura, were responsible for the middle. The 3 Sand Crypsis ninjas and Guy were responsible for the rear, and Hyojin and Jishui were responsible for the rear. After the arrangements were made, the infiltration began immediately. Chi! There was a sharp cry that sounded like the cry of a bird. Kakashi, who was not very tall, took the lead and charged into the formation of the terracotta soldiers like a spear flickering with lightning. Boom! 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 With a series of explosions, the terracotta soldiers fell to the ground one after another. Chidori's assault ability was fully displayed by Kakashi at this moment. In almost an instant, he, who was bathed in lightning, had already torn through the 5 or 6 layers of terracotta puppets. After Kakashi showed signs of weakness, Pakura, who was following closely behind, immediately formed a seal and shouted, "Scorching release! 5-wheel fire!" The 5 fireballs circled around Yi Tsong as if they had a mind of their own, burning the surrounding terracotta puppets to pieces, further tearing the formation of the terracotta puppets apart. The 3 sand ninjas in the middle of the team used ninjutsu at this time. Earth release, earth flow wall. In an instant, 2 earth walls protruded from the ground, protecting the tunnel that Kakashi and Hakura forcibly broke through, establishing a temporary safe passage in the formation of the terracotta soldiers. At the end of the team, Hyojin said to Jishui, "You go to the middle, I will bring up the rear alone." Knowing the strength of Hyojin, Jishui didn't talk nonsense. He knew that he was not good at fighting these terracotta soldiers head-on, so he quickened his pace and left the rear. Hyojin, who fell behind the team, was fully activating the Tenseigan at this moment. All the attacks of the terracotta soldiers were like broken frames in his eyes. Except for occasionally launching 1 or 2 attacks when he couldn't avoid, the attacks of the terracotta soldiers were almost no threat to him. And through close combat, Hyojin keenly discovered that the chakra in these terracotta soldiers were all the same, obviously from the same source, and this source gave people a feeling of evil and violence. If the source of these chakra is the foreign monster Morio, thinking of this, Hyojin secretly shook his head. With such an evil and violent attribute of chakra, it is obviously not suitable to be the source of chakra for artificial tailed beasts, so he ruled out the option of Morio. Although there are only 8 ninjas in the 2 teams, but almost all of them are the elites of their respective villages, especially Hakura, who is already a key figure in the Sand Crypsis. So it didn't take long for the joint team to completely break through the encirclement of the terracotta soldiers and safely enter the palace protected by the enchantment. As soon as the joint team entered, the guards guarding the palace cheered. The first to bear the brunt of the arrival of the monsters was the Miko-sama of the Land of Demons. So these days, the guards guarding the palace didn't dare to relax for even a moment. Now seeing the arrival of powerful reinforcements, they who were shrouded in anxiety and fear naturally cheered. In the lookout, Miko-sama was sitting on the futon with a sad face. Beside her was a little girl who looked very similar to the Miko-sama on the futon. It seems that she is the Miko-sama's daughter. On the side, there is also a team of rock ninjas. Obviously, the rock ninjas arrived here 1 step ahead of Class 11. Moreover, this team of rock ninjas looked very arrogant and unruly. As soon as he saw this group of rock ninjas, Hyojin suddenly became angry. They're the same group of rock ninjas that ambushed Hyojin outside of my village when he was escorting the wounded back to the village. That time was the closest Hyojin was to death in the entire war. If the Jonin reinforcement from the village had arrived, even a moment later, Suijin would have died, just like most of the other Jonin in the team, only a few miles away from the village. Afterwards, Hyojin deliberately inquired about this team of rock ninjas and learned that they are one of the famous beheading unit of the rock village. At the same time, the rock ninjas were also looking at the newly arrived reinforcements. There is no need to say much about Pakura of the Sand Crypsis. During the war, she was one of the representatives of the Sand Crypsis and belonged to the most famous group of ninjas in the shinobi world. Therefore, the captain of the rock beheading unit ignored the Sand Crypsis and said to the 4 members of Team 11 in a strange tone, "Humph, Mai only sent a few brats to die? It seems that Mai is really not going to make it." In Team 11, the oldest one is only 14 or 15 years old, and the youngest one is only 11 or 12 years old. So in terms of height, they are indeed a head shorter than the rock ninjas of the Sand Crypsis. Hyojin coldly replied, "You better be careful, don't accidentally die in the hands of these brats." If it was someone else who provoked him, Hyojin may have been too lazy to pay attention, but facing the rock beheading unit that almost killed him, he couldn't help but get angry. Chapter 37. If you can do it, you can come and try. Facing such an elite Jonin like the captain of the Rock Village's beheading unit, Suijin wasn't afraid at all. He took a step forward and revealed his killing intent. Kuroto is well aware of why the rock shinobi provoked him and the others. There is no doubt that the 4 generations Naruto and 9 tails of Jinchuriki are still fermenting. The weaker Sand Crypsis and Kiri are still behaving, but the stronger Cloud and Rock ninjas are starting to get restless. However, the more this is the case, the more Hyojin feels that he can't retreat. This kind of behavior will not stop because of retreat. On the contrary, the more you retreat, the more intense the opponent's probing will be. Feeling the invasion of Hyojin's killing intent, the rock ninja squinted his eyes and slowly put his hand on the hilt of the short sword on his waist. He felt that Hyojin wasn't bluffing. On Hyojin's side, Kakashi, Guy, and Jishue immediately assumed a fighting posture, and the members of the Rock Village beheading unit on the opposite side also became alert. In an instant, the hall was filled with the smell of gunpowder. The Miko-sama on the futon stood up at the right time and persuaded. Fellow ninjas, please put down your prejudices for the time being. The foreign demon is approaching here. Both sides also know that internal strife is not a wise choice when the demon is approaching, so they took a step back and maintained a temporary peace. Pakura, who has been watching with cold eyes, asked Miko-sama, "Miko-sama, please explain the current situation to us." Miko-sama nodded. "What we're going to face is a monster from another world called Morio. It's a shame to say that it was summoned from another world by a group of cultists called Yomi. The barrier I arranged can stop the Morio and the terracotta puppets controlled by it, but it can't stop the Yomi cultists, so when the Morio is about to arrive, it will definitely order the Yomi cultists to attack this place. Once this place is breached by Wang Liang, it will no longer have any scruples. The whole world will turn into hell in its madness." After listening to Miko-sama's introduction, everyone's face became gloomy. Although they haven't seen the true body of the demon yet, they have already dealt with the indestructible terracotta army, and they all know that if these terracotta army were to spread to the entire shinobi world, the situation will become difficult to control. Kakashi went straight to the point and asked, "Your Highness, do you have any way to deal with that monster?" Miko-sama caressed the little girl lying on her lap and said, "I can seal Morio, but the location of the seal must be the Demon Mountain in the Land of Swamps." The fact that the foreign demons could be sealed was obviously good news, but the location of the seal had to be in the Demon Sealing Mountain of the Swamp Country, which made things a little difficult for everyone. Pakura crossed his arms in front of his chest and rested his chin on his other hand. "Then how do we lure the monsters to the Demon Sealing Mountain in the Swamp Kingdom?" Miko-sama smiled warmly. "You don't have to worry. I am the biggest threat to the Demon Sealing Mountain. As long as I go to the Demon Sealing Mountain, it will definitely chase after me." Kakashi immediately took out a map and spread it on the ground. Although the Land of Swamps and the Land of Demons are neighbors, but there is still a distance of hundreds of kilometers between the Demon Sealing Mountain and the Miko Palace, and considering that Miko-sama herself is not a ninja, and the mountains and rivers are steep, the route must be carefully planned. Pakura thought for a moment and said, "The terracotta army outside is actually not that troublesome. As long as we break through their encirclement, they won't be able to catch up with us." The captain of the Rock Execution Unit nodded and said, "Well, the real trouble is the demon and the cultists. The cultists of Yomi were originally just a group of low-level ninjas, and their leader, Yomi, was only at the level of a jonin. But now that they have the power of the Morio, they have gained an almost inexhaustible supply of evil chakra, which allows them to perform ninjutsu unscrupulously, even large-scale combination ninjutsu. Their threat level has skyrocketed. Considering that if they are chased by the cultists on the way to the Demon Sealing Mountain, the situation will be out of control," Pakura said with a murderous look. "Instead of being besieged by the demon and Yomi on the way, it is better to use the barrier here to block the demon and the terracotta army first, and then escort Miko-sama to the Land of Swamp." The captain of the Rock Execution Unit said, "We also think so." Kakashi nodded. "We also have no objection." With the consensus of Mai, Sand Crypsis, and Rock Village, the Miko-sama's palace immediately mobilized to prepare for the upcoming battle. Because of the Byakugan and revolving heaven, Hyojin, who is both insight and defense, was arranged to protect Miko-sama and her daughter in the temple. Unlike other people who are worried, Hyojin is not too worried about the current situation, so his thoughts are still on the artificial-tailed beast. As his exploration of his Tenseigan gradually deepens, he has a feeling that the thing that limits his strength is none other than the chakra's amount in his body. He faintly feels that only by having more chakra can it be possible to unlock other abilities of the Tenseigan. Thinking about Nagato, who has the Rinnegan, this is not difficult to understand. After Nagato was transplanted with the Rinnegan by Madara Uchiha, he did not immediately gain the ability of the Rinnegan. It was not until his parents were killed and he was strongly stimulated that he awakened part of the power of the Rinnegan. Later, when he reached adulthood, his body was fully developed, and he was strongly stimulated by the death of his best friend Yahiko. He finally awakened all the abilities of the Rinnegan, and the price was that his body could not bear the burden and became thin and withered. It must be known that Nagato is an Uzumaki clan carefully selected by Madara Uchiha to resurrect himself, and the Uzumaki clan is famous for its tenacious vitality and huge chakras amount. Even so, the adult Uzumaki Nagato can't afford the fully awakened Rinnegan. Of course, there's a reason that the Rinnegan is not his own, but more importantly, it is because the requirements of the Rinnegan level for the user are too harsh. Therefore, Hyojin even has some doubts that the reason why his Tenseigan does not awaken more abilities is actually to protect him instinctively, because at present, his body is obviously not enough to support the fully awakened state of the Tenseigan. Because of this, he is tirelessly looking for an artificial-tailed beast. He needs a battery that can continuously provide him with chakra. Only with a large number of chakra can he dare to explore the mystery of the Tenseigan boldly. Chapter 38. As for the Morio that is currently wreaking havoc in the land of demons, it is undeniable that it is indeed a threat that cannot be underestimated. But that is all. There are countless strong people in the shinobi world, not to mention others. Just Nagato with his Rinnegan is more than enough to deal with the Morio. So even if Miko-sama fails to successfully seal the Morio, it is still impossible for him to truly rule the shinobi world. Moreover, in Hyojin's vague memory, this seemingly fragile Miko-sama actually has a very powerful sealing technique, and if nothing changes, it is also because of her self-sacrifice that she successfully sealed the Morio. Converging his scattered thoughts, Hyojin began to make his own calculations in his mind. After a while, he glanced at the little girl beside Miko-sama and asked, "Is she your daughter? What is her name?" Without waiting for Miko-sama to answer, the little girl said in a cute voice, "My name is Ziyuin Kagura." Miko-sama smiled and stroked little Ziyuin's hair with a doting expression on her face. Hyojin squatted down and deliberately teased Ziyuin. "Oh, so your name is Yuin Kagura. What a nice name." Little Ziyuin stared straight at Hyojin and mustered up her courage to ask, "Ninja-san, your mask is really interesting. Can you let me wear it?" Hyojin smiled and took off the eagle mask and handed it to Ziyuin Kagura. Holding the mask, little Ziyuin giggled and bounced around the hall. Looking at the carefree Ziyuin Kagura, Miko-sama's face flashed with a trace of sadness. From Miko-sama's expression, Hyojin can see that she has made up her mind. Even if she has to sacrifice herself, she will do her best to seal the Morio. Therefore, Hyojin asked, "Your Highness, are you really sure that you can seal the Morio?" Miko-sama lowered her head and said, "For everyone to live happily, I will definitely seal it. I will, even at the cost of your life." Miko-sama looked at Hyojin with a puzzled expression, not understanding why he asked such a question, but she still nodded firmly. "Yes, even if I have to pay with my life." Boom! Suddenly, a violent explosion came from outside the hall. There was no doubt that the battle outside had already begun. After calling little Ziyuin, who was running around the hall, to his side, Hyojin took back his umbu mask and stood in front of Miko-sama and Miko-sama. Gradually, the explosions outside became more and more frequent. The entire palace was faintly trembling. The enemy's shouts, the guard's shouts, and the wails of the wounded were all mixed together. Staring at the door of the lookout, Hyojin's mind was elsewhere. Whether this mission is a coincidence or some kind of test by the three generations. In short, since they have come to the land of demons, they can't miss this heaven-sent opportunity. After making up his mind, Hyojin said softly, "Ziyuan is still so young. Presumably you don't want her to live alone in the future." Miko-sama was even more puzzled. "What do you mean?" Hyojin said frankly, "That demon is not as strong as you think. At best, it is at the level of a tailed beast. In the shinobi world, there are not many means to suppress a tailed beast, but it is not impossible." Hearing the implication of Hyojin's words, Miko-sama pondered for a moment. Without waiting for Miko-sama to speak, Hyojin directly stated his conditions. "I need some special products of the land of swamps. If your highness is willing to help me collect them, I will do my best to protect your highness' safety." Miko-sama doesn't mind paying extra, but she doesn't believe that Hyojin, who is only 14 or 15 years old, really has the ability to suppress the Morio. But now, she doesn't have much choice, so she asked, "What exactly do you want?" Hyojin stated his purpose: purple clay. Purple clay is not only expensive, but also scarce in quantity. If he collected it by himself, it would take at least 3 to 5 years. But if Miko-sama of the land of demons, who is also very prestigious in the land of swamps, comes forward, then things would be much simpler, and it would also be a better cover-up to prevent others from following the clue of purple clay and finding out about Hyojin's plan to create artificial tailed beasts. Miko-sama's eyebrows slightly wrinkled. "As far as I know, purple clay is a kind of sealing material. What do you want it for?" Hyojin didn't answer Miko-sama's question, but promised again, "As long as your highness is willing to help me collect purple clay, I will guarantee your highness safety on this trip. I will keep my word." This guarantee is not an empty promise from Hyojin. Whether it is his 3 generations Kazekage puppets or Jishue Susanoo, all of them have the ability to suppress the tailed beast for a short period of time, and using it on Morio should not be a problem. At that time, Miko-sama can calmly arrange the seal. There is no need to die together with Morio. "Okay, I promise you." Although purple clay is expensive, it is not a rare treasure for Miko-sama of the land of demons. So Miko-sama didn't hesitate too much. After negotiating the deal, the two of them tacitly quieted down. Only the ignorant Cheyenne scratched her head, staring at the Miko for a while, and then at Kuroto for a while, not understanding why the two of them suddenly stopped talking. Not too long later, a few white-robed Huang Quan disciples rushed into the divine temple. Without hesitation, Hyojin used rain will pull to attract the intruding disciples to him, and then instantly killed them with his soft fists. The whole process only took a few breaths of time. Miko-sama's face was full of panic when the enemy was eliminated. Miko-sama, who didn't even see the appearance of the enemy, was stunned for a while before slowly praising, "You really are an excellent ninja." "Since I promised, I won't let anything happen to you, Your Highness." After saying that, Hyojin added, "In addition, I hope that the agreement between us can be kept a secret." Miko-sama gently nodded. "Don't worry, I won't leak it out." After a while, the outside of the temple became calm again. Not long after, Sancrypsis and rock ninjas returned to the temple one after another. Pacorus said, "Most of the disciples have been dealt with by us. The rest are nothing to be afraid of." The captain of the rock beheading unit said, "We can set off at any time." Kakashi nodded and didn't say anything. Hyojin glanced at the group of people who came in. Although all of them looked a little embarrassed, they didn't have any injuries. It could be seen that although the battle just now was not small, the confrontation was not fierce. But this is also normal, whether it is Sancrypsis or Rock Village. Almost all of the people sent to support the Land of Demons are elites, and dealing with the disciples of Yellow Springs, except for Chakra's amount, they're all Chunin level Chunin. As if thinking of something, Hyojin asked, "What about the leader of Yellow Springs?" Guy laughed heartily. "That guy was hit by Chidori. Although he escaped, I don't think he will survive." Kuroto vaguely remembers that it was a remnant of Yomi that caused the Morio's resurrection 10 years later, but he wasn't sure if that remnant was the leader of Yomi that escaped this time. Kuroto vaguely remembered that it was a remnant of Yomi that caused the Morio's resurrection 10 years later, but he wasn't sure if that remnant was the leader of Yomi that escaped this time. Chapter 39. After dealing a heavy blow to the Yomi Order and solving the problem of the ninjas' harassment, the next step of escorting Miko to the Land of Swamps can be carried out immediately. Before leaving, Miko-sama hid little Ziyuin in a secret room at the bottom of the palace. In the secret room, no one knew what Miko-sama told little Ziyuin, but it was obvious that even with Hyojin's guarantee, Miko-sama was still determined to go to the Land of Swamps. When everything was ready, Yakura of San Crypsis, who had the Scorch Release Kekiai Genkai, was responsible for leading the way. My Umbu team, 11, was responsible for protecting Miko-sama, and the Rock Beheading Unit, who specialized in Earth Escape, was at the back of the team, responsible for bringing up the rear. Soon, the group broke through the siege of the terracotta puppets outside the palace and headed towards the country of swamps. Along the way, Miko-sama led the way while sensing the Morio from a distance. According to Miko-sama's real-time sensing, everyone was surprised to find that the speed of the monster behind them was very fast, not inferior to the speed of an elite ninja. Fortunately, Wang Liang didn't show up during the battle with the Netherworld cult. Otherwise, it would have been extremely dangerous for them to break out of the palace's barrier. Seeing the distance between the team and Morio getting closer and closer, the captain of Rock Village's beheading unit couldn't help but shout, "Hey, we can't go on like this." It wasn't only the people from Rock Village who couldn't keep their cool. Yitsong of the San Crypsis also nodded. "If we waste chakra like this, I'm afraid that even if we reach Demon Ceiling Mountain, we won't have the strength to fight that monster." Unlike the tireless Wang Liang, chakra's energy consumption is very large. If they can't get rid of Wang Liang in a short time, the situation will become more and more unfavorable for them. As the captain of Squad 11, Kakashi suggested, "Then let's find a suitable place to ambush it." Miko-sama, who was being carried on Guy's back, thought for a while and hesitantly said, "I can arrange a temporary sealing enchantment. If it works, it may be able to trap Morio for a while." Yitsong said, "I'll leave it to you then." Once the discussion was settled, everyone immediately got to work. The location of the ambush was a steep canyon with a meandering river in it. With the help of everyone, Miko-sama placed a sealing technique on both sides of the canyon. These Fuinjutsu techniques are very complex. Others will feel slightly dizzy just by glancing at them from a distance. Even Hyojin, who has the Tenseigan, will feel slightly uncomfortable if he looks at them carefully. This shows the power of these Fuinjutsu techniques. Not long after, the monster that had been chasing them finally appeared. Wang Liang looked like a dragon, but not a dragon, like a crocodile, but not a crocodile. Its whole body was dark purple and exuded a black fog that seemed illusory and real. Most of its body was hidden in the fog, making people unable to see its specific appearance. Because of the barrier that Miko-sama placed outside the palace, Morio and his terracotta army couldn't get close to the palace, so they could only send their followers to attack the palace and attack Miko-sama. Now that Miko-sama has left the protection of the barrier, Morio will no longer sit back and watch. How can it be so big? Looking up at Morio's huge and strange body, everyone exclaimed in unison. Although most of its body was hidden in the black fog, it could be judged from the exposed head that Morio's body size is comparable to the tailed beast, is a monster in the true sense. Pakura of the San Crypsis also frowned slightly. Dealing with large enemies is not something she is good at. Kakashi and Guy were even more surprised. The moment they saw Morio, bad memories appeared in their minds. The monster in front of them seems to overlap with the 9 tails that ravaged the village half a year ago. There is no doubt that huge monsters like the tailed beast or the demon Morio are a nightmare for most ninjas. Even some ninjas who have reached the Kage level have no way to deal with these huge monsters. Therefore, everyone's reaction when they saw Morio is also reasonable. If there is anyone who is not shocked, then it should be Miko-sama, who knows some details about Morio, and Hyojin, who has vague memories of his previous life. As for Jisue, with his Manjiki Sharingan, he is actually not too afraid of large monsters. It's just that he doesn't dare to use Manjiki Jutsu. After all, his jutsu is too scary. Once it is exposed, it will be difficult for the village to tolerate him. Seeing that Morio has entered the ambush circle, Hyojin still maintained his calm and shouted, "It's time to start." After coming back to their senses, everyone calmed down and launched the ambush according to the original plan. Earth release, earth flow river. Earth release, underworld marsh. Earth release, earth flow wall. Earth release, earth flow wall. The 4 members of the rock village distributed on both sides of the canyon simultaneously printed and launched a series of earth release ninjutsu. In an instant, quicksand, mud, earth walls, and stone pillars came from all directions, temporarily trapping Morio in the canyon. Roar. A soul-stirring roar came out of the Wangliang's mouth, shaking people into a trance. Miko-sama warned, "Everyone be careful, don't get too close." Struggling violently, Morio quickly broke the stone wall that was holding him down, but for a while it was difficult to break free from the mud swamp at the bottom. Scorch release, steam kill. In order to prevent Morio from escaping, Pakura immediately used his trump card and hit Morio's head hard, forcing him into the mud swamp at the bottom. At this time, Miko-sama, who was ready, silently chanted a spell. As Miko-sama chanted the spell, the seals arranged on both sides of the canyon emitted a faint fluorescent light, and a thin enchantment appeared, covering Morio inside. Guy hurriedly asked, "Did you succeed?" Miko-sama nodded weakly. There is no doubt that even a temporary seal is not a small consumption for Miko-sama. Kakashi didn't dare to delay and immediately urged everyone, "Let's go. I don't know how long this temporary seal will last. We have to hurry to the Demon Mountain." Instantly, the scattered people once again returned to the commando formation and rushed towards the Demon Mountain. Rumble. The loud noise continued to come from behind. Morio was obviously violently struggling to break free from the shackles of the seal, and every time he hit, the canyon would tremble, showing that his strength was beyond imagination. Miko-sama, who was carried on Guy's back, weakly reminded everyone, "Morio has the ability to control minds. Don't get too close to him, otherwise it's easy to be controlled by him and become his puppet." When everyone heard this, their scalp tingled. Chapter 40. After traveling day and night, a few days later, they finally arrived at their destination, Demon Ceiling Mountain. Looking at the dangerous mountain in front of him, Pakura suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and asked, "This damn place is the Demon Ceiling Mountain?" Miko-sama nodded and immediately explained, "Inside the Demon Ceiling Mountain, there is a natural lava that can suppress the Morio's evil and cold chakra. It is an excellent place to seal the Morio." Pakura immediately asked, "What should we do next?" Unlike the arrogance they had when they first arrived, after seeing the Morio, whether it was the Sand Crypsis ninjas or the Rock ninjas, all of their arrogance disappeared, leaving only the anxiety of completing the task as soon as possible. Miko-sama pointed to the cave leading to the inside of the Demon Ceiling Mountain. "Lead the Morio into the cave, then seal his body here." The captain of the Rock beheading unit looked puzzled. "Only seal the body?" Miko-sama gently nodded. "Yes, only seal the body." The captain of the Rock beheading unit asked the question in everyone's mind, "Why?" The power of the Morio is too strong, and his chakra is extremely corrosive. If we seal his whole body, it will only take a few years for him to break the seal and escape. After a pause, Miko-sama continued, "So we must seal his body and soul separately to ensure that nothing will go wrong. Then please start the preparation immediately." Kakashi looked into the distance and said, "I have a bad feeling. I'm afraid there's not much time left for us to arrange the seal." At this time, Hyojin stood up and said to everyone, "Just guard the outside. I will be responsible for the final seal. Everyone was surprised when they heard this. Sealing the Morio inside the demon-sealing mountain can be said to be the most dangerous part of the entire task. Not to mention the Sand Crypsis and Rock Ninjas. Even Kakashi and Guy looked at Hyojin in confusion. They didn't understand why Hyojin would take such a dangerous task on himself. Yakura asked in a deep voice, "What do you mean by this?" Hyojin calmly said, "My meaning is very clear. When Wang Liang comes, you don't need to stop him. Just block the terracotta puppets that are under his control. I'll take care of the rest." The captain of the Rock Village's beheading unit questioned, "I don't feel at ease with a brat like you." Although the captain of Rock Village's execution unit doesn't want to fight with a monster like Morio, he also doesn't want to mess things up, so he instinctively refused Hyojin's request. At this time, Jishui also stood up, bowed to the crowd, and said sincerely, "I will complete the final seal with him. Please rest assured, we will not fail the mission." Hyojin turned to Jishui. "Thank you." Jishui didn't say anything and just smiled gently. Yakura coldly said, "If you fail, you must bear all the responsibility." In Yakura's view, even after seeing Morio's power, Hyojin and Jishui are still so confident. There's only one possibility. They really have the means to deal with Morio. As the captain, Kakashi has some doubts, but in the end, he didn't say anything. On the Rock Village's side, seeing that Yakura and Kakashi both nodded in agreement, the captain of Rock Village's beheading unit's face became gloomy, but after a moment, he still nodded and compromised. After the discussion was settled, everyone immediately began to arrange. Hyojin pulled Guy to the side and whispered, "After we enter Demon Mountain, you can only let Morio come in. Others, including you and Kakashi, are not allowed to come in, understand?" Guy was a bit confused. "Why is that?" "I will explain it to you later, but for now, you just need to remember my words." Guy anxiously said, "What if you have an accident inside? Are we just going to watch from the outside?" Hyojin calmly said, "If Jishui and I can't solve it, then you will only die if you come in. Kuroto, you have to believe in your companions, even if I don't have the ability to help you. But Kakashi is very powerful. If it's him, he will definitely have a way to help you. It's because I trust you that I let you guard the entrance. Do you think it's easy to block those terracotta army puppets?" After a smile, Hyojin's face sank. "Remember my words, except for Morio, no one is allowed to come in if necessary. Use the Hashiman Tonku secret technique." Seeing Hyojin's solemn expression, Guy nodded and said, "I promise you." With Guy's assurance, Hyojin, Jishui, and Miko-sama walked towards the belly of Demon Mountain. In the dark cave, Hyojin asked Miko-sama, "How long will it take to set up the seal?" Miko-sama seemed to have thought about it a long time ago, and replied, "It won't take much time to set up the seal, but to activate the seal, it will take at least 15 minutes or even longer." Hyojin frowned slightly. "That is to say, we have to control Morio for at least 15 minutes? Miko-sama nodded with a solemn expression. Miko-sama is not sure that Hyojin and Jishui can control Morio for 15 minutes. So before coming to Demon Mountain, she was ready to die together with Morio. At this moment, the only thing she can't let go of is her daughter Ziyuan. Jishui gritted her teeth and said, "Kuroto-san, leave these 15 minutes to me." Hyojin shook his head and said, "You are less than 12 years old. Your body can't bear the excessive use of the pupil technique. Jishui's strength is more reflected in the pupil technique. In terms of pure physique, he is only slightly better than the average level of Uchiha, not too outstanding. In addition, he is still young, his body has not fully developed. So in terms of chakra's amount, he barely reached the level of an ordinary Jonin, which is worse than Hyojin." Jishui still wanted to say, but before Jishui finished speaking, Hyojin interrupted. "I already have a plan. You only need to be responsible for the suppression in the early stage. I will take care of the rest." Miko-sama thought for a moment and said, "I may be able to delay some time." Hyojin asked, "Do you have any idea?" Miko-sama hesitated for a moment before finally sighing and saying, "Speaking of which, That demon Morio also has some relationship with the Miko-sama of the land of demons. If I must say, it is actually a part of me. Jishue's eyes widened. This, Hyojin was not too surprised. Although he can't remember the entanglement between Miko-sama and Morio, he still vaguely remembered that there seemed to be some secret connection between the two. Otherwise, Morio would not have pestered Miko-sama all the way from the country of demons to the country of swamps. After revealing the secret in her heart, Miko-sama seemed to be much more relaxed. Then, she knelt in front of Hyojin and Jishue and said, "I am really ashamed to have caused all this during the National Day holiday. If there were no accidents, the update would maintain 3 updates a day." Chapter 41. Hyojin sighed, then stepped forward to help Miko-sama up. "Now is not the time to repent. After we seal Morio, you will have plenty of time to atone for your sins." Miko-sama nodded silently. After exchanging a glance with Jishue, Hyojin said to Miko-sama, "In a moment, the two of us may use forbidden jutsu. I hope that you can keep a secret for us. Don't leak out our forbidden jutsu." Miko-sama solemnly promised. "Please rest assured, I will not reveal any information about you to anyone." As soon as the words were spoken, the estrangement between the three also disappeared. Miko-sama got busy arranging the Fuin jutsu, while Hyojin and Jishue looked for a suitable place to fight in the cave. The environment in the belly of Demon Sealing Mountain was extremely dangerous. There was boiling lava everywhere, and if one was the slightest bit careless, it was possible that one would fall into the lava and die, without even a corpse remaining. Therefore, if they fight here, they not only have to face the enemy, but also the complex and harsh environment. It seems that this is not the first time that Miko-sama has been here. She skillfully shuttled back and forth on the lava, arranging a complicated and obscure Fuinjutsu. After carefully looking around with the Tenseigan, Hyojin reminded Jishue, who was beside him, the ground in the belly of the mountain doesn't seem to be very hard. When the fight starts, be extra careful. Jishue nodded. At this time, he also opened his Sharingan. The 3 tomo slowly rotated in his eyes. It seems that he is carefully observing the surrounding environment with his pupil power. On this side, Hyojin and Jishue chatted with each other. On the other side, Miko-sama seems to have finished arranging the Fuinjutsu. Looking at the Fuinjutsu arranged secretly in the belly of the mountain, Hyojin couldn't help but praise Miko-sama's Fuinjutsu is really brilliant. Jishue nodded and said, "The sealing technique of the Miko-sama of the land of demons is as famous as the Uzumaki clan of the land of Uzumaki. With the extinction of the Uzumaki clan, the Miko-sama of the land of demons should be the most famous in the shinobi world in terms of sealing technique." As if thinking of something, Jishue's interest waned. It's not a good thing to be too famous. Uchiha's reputation was too great, causing all the disciples in the clan to be arrogant and despotic. They were always incompatible with the village, causing them to fall into an awkward situation where they were in a dilemma. Seeing that Miko-sama has such a high level of attainment in Fuinjutsu, Hyojin's thoughts immediately turned to his plan of creating an artificial tail beast. In the information that Orochimaru had given him on the artificial tail beasts, sealing techniques accounted for more than 70% of all the techniques. It could be said that without enough attainment in sealing techniques, the artificial tailed beast could not be completed. For Hyojin, sealing techniques were undoubtedly his shortcoming. Therefore, the Miko-sama of the land of demons has become a treasure in his eyes at this time. However, the Miko-sama of the land of demons has quite a reputation in the surrounding countries. If he wants to learn Fuinjutsu from her, he must pay attention to the method. Otherwise, it will easily cause a diplomatic storm. Thinking of this, Hyojin thought of more things. In the information about the artificial tailed beast, the village used the Uzumaki clan's Fuinjutsu. Although the Uzumaki clan's attainment in Fuinjutsu is extremely high, but as the saying goes, 2 people are better than 1 person. If the Miko-sama's Fuinjutsu is added to the artificial tailed beast, The two types of Fuinjutsu will complement each other and may achieve unexpected results. Just as Hyojin was lost in his thoughts, the ground under his feet suddenly trembled. Walala! At the same time, a lot of gravel fell from the ceiling of the cave. The Miko-sama, who was sitting in the center of the ceiling formation, shouted, "It's coming!" Hyojin and Ji Shui looked at each other and hid. Not long after, accompanied by a loud rumbling sound, Wanliang's huge body was like a mountain torrent, aggressively surging into the belly of the demon ceiling mountain. Methreya, you shouldn't have refused me. Morio, who almost blocked the entire entrance of the cave, bowed his body and made a low voice that seemed to come from the underworld. Miko-sama pondered for a moment, then shook her head. You are wrong. Morio slowly approached Miko-sama while trying to entice her. Become one with me. With your strength combined with mine, no one will be able to defeat us, and the whole world will crawl under our feet. If you do that, it will only bring endless disasters to the world, and in the end, we will all fall into eternal damnation. In order to delay time, Miko-sama's tone was a little loose, but her refusal was not decisive. Seeing this scene, Morio didn't immediately attack, but asked loudly, "What are you worried about? You should be very clear that after you and I become one, there is no power in this world that can compete with us. Those ninjas, samurai, they're all ants. There's no need to worry about them at all." Miko-sama shook her head and said, "You are too arrogant." Arrogant. Morio snorted heavily and angrily said, "You are too stupid. You forgot how noble we are. You also forgot that we were." "No, what are you doing?" Halfway through his words, Morio was horrified to notice the dangerous atmosphere in the cave. Seeing that the disguise was exposed, Miko-sama couldn't delay any longer. Hyojin and Jishui immediately rushed out of their hiding place. Before Morio could react, Hyojin shouted, "Do it!" With Hyojin's order, Jishui suddenly opened her eyes. The three Magatama in her eyes quickly merged together and turned into a kaleidoscope shaped like a four-blade shuriken. Susanoo. With a low shout, a green Susanoo emerged from Jishui's body, standing between Miko-sama and Morio. At this moment, both Miko-sama and Morio were shocked by the scene in front of them. Obviously, they didn't expect that this skinny kid with a cat face mask could use such an impressive move. Just by feeling, they could tell that this Susanoo was not someone to be trifled with. Maintaining the Susanoo was a huge burden for Shursui, so he didn't dare to delay. He immediately used the Susanoo to spread his arms, one in front and one in back, pressing the Morio down. Morio was furious and roared, "Lowly human, how dare you!" Boom! At this time, a huge iron spear fell from the sky and pierced Morio's mouth, interrupting his roar. Miko-sama looked at Hyojin in the air with a dumbfounded face. At this moment, Hyojin is standing on a mass of iron sand, suspended in the air, and beside him is a strange ninja with a pair of iron wings wrapped in bandages. Chapter 42. Coming back to her senses, Miko-sama quickly activated the ceiling formation. The activation of the ceiling formation caused Morio to instinctively feel fear. He and Miko-sama are originally one, so he knows Miko-sama's weakness, and Miko-sama naturally also knows his weakness. So, the Morio struggled with all his might. Rumble. With the Morio's huge body constantly twisting and struggling, the entire cave suddenly shook. Jishui's expression became solemn, and he immediately activated the Susanoo with all his strength. In an instant, the two behemoths wrestled in the cave, causing gravel to splatter and dust to rise. After avoiding a few pieces of gravel falling from the dome, Hyojin glanced at the battle situation in midair. The size of the Morio is bigger than Jishui's Susanoo, so in terms of strength, Jishui doesn't have the upper hand. Moreover, the fierce confrontation between the two behemoths made the cave somewhat unbearable. More and more gravel fell from the dome. It seems that the entire cave is showing signs of collapse. Hyojin no longer hesitated, and immediately infused the Tenseigan chakra into the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets. After a moment, with a thought, he commanded the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets to use their strongest attack. Magnetic release. Iron Sand World Law. The iron sand in the sky converged into a sharp iron spear, and then, like cannonballs, these iron spears shot towards Amorio, piercing his huge body and firmly nailing him to the ground. Then, these iron spears connected with each other like a dense, thorny scaffold, imprisoning the huge body of the Morio in a narrow area. Miko-sama, who was silently activating the sealing formation, was slightly taken aback. It's really magnetic release? In the current shinobi world, it is said that only the missing Sandame Kazekage of the Sand Village and the Yandame Kazekage, who is currently in power, have mastered this Kekkai Genkai. Although Miko-sama doesn't pay much attention to the affairs of the shinobi world, she is still aware of this common sense. She wasn't too sure before, but it wasn't until the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets cast the Iron Sand Domain Law that she was convinced that the strange ninja flying next to Hyojin was a magnet release, Kekkai Genkai. Under the Iron Sand World Law and Susanu's simultaneous attacks, Morio was quickly suppressed, and his struggles became much weaker. Wang Liang roared loudly, "Damn, you stupid and lowly humans, you don't understand what you have provoked." The loud, buzzing sound reverberated in the empty cave, making everyone's eardrums hurt. But Hyojin and Jishui remained unmoved, concentrating on suppressing Morio, waiting for Miko-sama to finally activate the sealing formation. "Methria, watch carefully. These ants can't stop me." After shouting, Morio's head passed through the gap of the Iron Sand Domain Law in a strange and twisted posture, and then looked at Jishui. Miko-sama's face changed, and said in shock, "Quickly dodge. He's going to use witchcraft." "Ha ha, he can't escape." With a burst of wanton laughter, Morio stared at Jishui and shouted, "It is your honor to become my plaything." Dark Secret Technique. Inner Demon Manifestation. Inner Demon Manifestation is a kind of jinjutsu that can manipulate people's minds. The victim of this technique will immediately become a soulless walking corpse that only obeys Morio's orders. After casting the secret technique, Morio immediately ordered Jishui, "Quick, go kill them." The target that Morio ordered Jishui to attack is naturally Hyojin and the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets in the air. So Hyojin was shocked and hurriedly looked at Jishui. Miko-sama also looked at Jishui. Her whole heart was in her throat, and she even forgot to activate the sealing formation. For a time, everyone's eyes in the cave fell on Jishui. Jishui, who had activated the Manjiki Sharingan, was speechless and controlled Susanu to punch Morio's head. Bang! With a muffled sound, Morio's twisted head fell to the ground. How is this possible? Morio looked at Jishui again and immediately shouted, "It's your eyes." Damn it! Morio was not ignorant. He noticed that Jishui's Manjiki Sharingan was different from others, and guessed that it was this pair of eyes that made his Jinjutsu ineffective. Miko-sama breathed a long sigh of relief. At that moment, she was really disheartened. She has already seen the strength of Jishui. Once Jishui becomes Morio's puppet, the situation will be reversed in an instant. At that time, she is not even sure if she will have the chance to die together with Morio. Morio angrily shouted at Jishui, "Human, you can resist my magical secret technique. This is enough for you to be proud of for a lifetime. It seems that you are one of the few strong humans." In the middle of the words, Morio suddenly rose his twisted head, looked at Hyojin on the other side, and shouted, "Haha, then I will let you become my puppet." Dark Secret Technique. Inner Demon Manifestation. Morio's sudden diversion made Miko-sama's heart that had just fallen down was hanging again. At this moment, she was both angry and annoyed. She was angry that Morio was so despicable to suddenly attack Hyojin, and she was annoyed that she forgot to remind Hyojin in her panic. In her opinion, Jishui being able to resist Morio's secret technique is already 1 in a million. It is impossible that Hyojin can also resist it. After all, she knows Morio's strength best. In mid-air, Hyojin, who was standing on a mass of iron sand, felt a burst of malice coming towards him. Then, seeing that there is no abnormality, Hyojin ignored Morio and asked Jishui in confusion, "What is it doing?" Jishui scratched his head and said with some uncertainty, "It seems to be using Jinjutsu on us. Because of the Manjikyu Sharingan, I don't feel anything. What about you, senpai?" "I don't feel anything either." After a pause, Hyojin curled his lips and said, "But it is quite scary." Jishui nodded seriously. "Well, it is quite scary." Hyojin turned to Miko-sama and asked, "Your Highness, how long will it take to activate the seal formation?" "Oh." Miko-sama hurriedly continued to activate the seal formation. At this moment, Miko-sama suddenly felt that she didn't have to worry about Hyojin and Jishui at all. Morio was stunned for a while, and then looked at Hyojin in surprise and shouted, "Impossible! How can you resist my secret technique? How is this possible?" When dealing with Yellow Spring cultists, let alone a secret technique like inner demon manifestation, even a simplified soul control technique would be enough to turn them into complete puppets. Chapter 43. Outside the cave of the demon sealing mountain. Scorch release, steam kill. Accompanied by the hissing sound of steam, the surface of countless terracotta puppets gradually dried up and cracked. These cracks were getting bigger and bigger, and finally all the puppets broke into a pile of gravel. In the sand crypsis, Pakura didn't pay much attention to the results of her battle. At this time, her face was pale, and her brows were wrinkled. On the other side, after using Earth Release to temporarily imprison a large number of terracotta puppets, the captain of the Rock Village's beheading unit looked back at the entrance of the cave with a solemn expression. After the demon rushed into the cave, there was a continuous loud noise coming from the cave. Even if he was outside the cave, he can imagine that there must be an extremely fierce battle going on in the cave at this moment. At the entrance of the cave, after temporarily repelling a few terracotta puppets with detonation talismans, Kakashi retreated to Guy's side and asked anxiously, "Guy, are they really okay?" Guy nodded. "I believe in Kuroto-kun." Rumble. As soon as Guy's voice fell, there was another loud noise coming from the cave. At the same time as the loud noise, there was a chilling, evil chakra. Kakashi quickly looked at the cave, and the Sharingan given to him by Obsidian also operated at this time. In the vision of the Sharingan, Morio's evil chakra seems to be substantial. It seems that the entire space of the cave can accommodate it, and it actually flowed out of the cave. Wiping the sweat on his temples, Kakashi couldn't help but sigh. Facing such a monster in the cave, I'm dead. Inside the cave, Hyojin shouted to Jishui while in midair, "Leave the rest to me." Jishui nodded and put away the Susanoo. From the beginning to the end, it has only been a few minutes, but he is already panting a little. It can be seen that awakening the Manjikyu Sharingan at such a young age is not a good thing. Without the assistance of the Susanoo, Morio's struggle became more intense. The previous two failures in casting the secret technique not only severely hit Wang Liang's pride, but also unconsciously affected his confidence in himself. At this moment, it has discovered that both Hyojin and Jishui are powerful ninjas with strange jutsu, Kekkei Genkai, especially their eyes, which make it feel uneasy. This was unimaginable in the past. In fact, from a moment Jishui activated the Susanoo, it has been in a state of confusion. As it doesn't know much about the top powers of the shinobi world, it never thought that it would fall into such a dangerous situation, and the next series of changes made it even more panicked. It wasn't until this moment that Kuroto clearly realized that the Yomi cult that believed in him was completely useless in the shinobi world, and it was a huge mistake to estimate the strength of the entire shinobi world with the strength of the Yomi cult. As for the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets flying beside Hyojin, Morio has long noticed that they are soulless puppets, and he has also tried to forcibly control the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets. But it was resisted by the Tenseigan chakra inside the puppets. 2 powerful jutsu, Kekiai Genkai, of unknown origin, coupled with a Miko of the land of demons who naturally restrains him. No matter how arrogant Morio is, he knows that the current situation is very unfavorable for him. If he doesn't find a way to get out, then he really can't escape the fate of being sealed. In the face of Morio's almost crazy struggle, Hyojin's expression became cold. As a trump card, the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets have already been used, so naturally, he will not be stingy with chakra. So no matter how many iron spears Morio breaks free from, there will be a continuous supply of iron spears, firmly nailing him in place. Damn it! More and more iron spears pierced his body, making Morio let out an unwilling roar. In the case of Hyojin fully instilling Tenseigan chakra, the combat power of the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets is close to that of the 3 generations of Kazekage. And the 3 generations of Kazekage, known as the strongest Kazekage, can be regarded as one of the strong Kage who can restrain giant monsters, so is not difficult to suppress Morio for a short period of time. Time passed little by little. Soon after, the Miko's sealing formation finally began to activate. In just an instant, the sealing formation all around the cave emitted a faint fluorescent light. These fluorescent lights gathered together and became brighter and brighter, until finally, it seems to have become a dazzling sun. Feeling a great threat, Morio struggled more and more crazily, even if his body was torn apart. Rumble, for a time, the earth in the cave shook, and the iron spears that bound Morio also collapsed. Kuroto made up his mind, and made up his mind. At this point, how could he give Morio a chance to make a comeback? So he didn't care much and instilled almost all the chakra in his body into the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets. The broken iron sand once again turned into a sharp iron spear and fiercely pierced Morio's body. Jishui also wanted to step forward to help, but as soon as he lifted his legs, his feet softened and he fell to the ground. Just now, Susanoo consumed too much of his chakra. He didn't feel it before, but when he was ready to activate Susanoo again, he suddenly found that his body can't bear it anymore. At this time, the Miko finally finished the long incantation silently. He saw her slowly get up, pointed to Morio with one arm, and said softly, "Seal, open." The dazzling light, like the sun, slowly flew to Morio. "No!" Morio struggled in horror and wailed. Puff! In midair, Hyojin spat out a mouthful of blood. Morio's last struggle was so fierce that he exhausted all the chakra in his body and couldn't suppress it, so he had to launch a body regeneration secret technique, forcibly squeezing some chakra out of the new cells. The ball of light finally fell on Wang Liang's head. Accompanied by an unwilling wail, Wang Liang's huge body was like a deflated ball, quickly withering. Then, the Miko made several complicated seals. The dazzling light immediately turned into a light curtain engraved with sealing spells. This light curtain was like a piece of cloth, wrapping up Wang Liang's withered and dispirited body layer by layer. Finally, when all the light dissipated, a giant cocoon wrapped in white cloth, full of sealing techniques, slowly fell in front of Hyojin and Jishui. Jishui, who fell to the ground, looked happy. Did it succeed? Suddenly, a dark purple chakra, as thick as mud, sprang out of the cracks in the ground. This evil chakra that suddenly sprang out did not attack anyone in the cave, but fled in the direction of the cave in a panic. Chapter 44. Seeing that Morio was trying to escape, the witch suddenly panicked. Stop it! Once Morio's soul escapes, the seal will fail, and there will be endless troubles in the future. Brush, brush, brush. Before the witch's voice fell, the sound of breaking air sounded. This was the shuriken that Jishui shot towards Morio's soul. However, although these shurikens accurately hit the target, without exception, they all passed through the body and did not cause any substantial damage to the soul in the state of chakra. Jishui's face sank. but it was too late to launch other attacks. In just a few breaths, Morio's soul was only a dozen meters away from the entrance of the tunnel. At this moment, on the other side, Hyojin decisively used rain wheel manipulation. Suddenly, Morio's soul, which was only a few meters away from the entrance of the tunnel, suddenly stagnated, as if it was firmly grasped by a pair of invisible hands. Even if it was Chakra's body, it was difficult to break free. If I really let you escape, I won't have fought in vain. After that, Hyojin strengthened rain wheel manipulation and suddenly absorbed Morio's soul. With the improvement of Hyojin's strength, the range of rain wheel manipulation has also increased. Now, no matter what object within 20 meters, it cannot escape the control of rain wheel manipulation. Miko-sama, who was prepared, quickly took out a wooden box from the scroll she carried with her. And while Kuroto was absorbing Morio's soul, she cast a sealing technique on it. No, without the protection of the body, Morio in the state of soul could not resist the witch's sealing technique, and in the last unwilling roar, it was completely sealed. After completely sealing Morio, the three people in the cave sat on the ground and breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, the three of them were a little exhausted. Miko-sama had cast several sealing techniques in a row. Especially the time when she sealed Morio's body, she had almost exhausted all of her strength. So although she didn't intervene in the battle, she still consumed a lot of her strength. Jishue's situation is not much better. Before he obtained the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, even using the Manjikyu Sharingan is not a small burden for Jishue. Not to mention, he also used Susanoo to fight against Morio, so his consumption is far greater than it seems. As for Hyojin, he had even used the physical regeneration secret technique. Just that attack alone had overdrawn his lifespan by at least 2 to 3 months. From this, it could be seen that Wang Liang was indeed very strong, at least at the level of a normal-tailed beast. After resting for a while, Miko-sama sincerely thanked Hyojin and Jishue. This time it's all thanks to the two of you. If it weren't for you, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Miko-sama's gratitude came from the bottom of her heart. Originally, she thought that only by perishing together with Morio would they be able to avoid this catastrophe, but she never thought that the matter would be resolved so smoothly. Hyojin put away the 3 generations Kazekage puppet and said, "I have done what I promised you." Miko-sama nodded. "Please rest assured, I will definitely fulfill my promise." At this time, Jishue also stood up and asked Hyojin curiously, "Miko-sama, did you just use a puppet? A puppet that can use magnet release?" Hyojin didn't hide anything and replied directly, "Well, it's a puppet that I obtained by chance. As for why it can use magnet release, it's because it's originally 3 generations Kazekage." What? Not only Jishue, but Miko-sama was also shocked. 3 generations Kazekage, known as the strongest Kazekage, turned into a puppet. This kind of thing can't help but surprise them. 3 generations Kazekage were assassinated by a puppet master in the Sand Crypsis and made into a puppet. In a battle, I was lucky enough to take the 3 generations Kazekage puppet from the hands of that puppet master. It's as simple as that. Hyojin briefly explained the matter of obtaining the 3 generations Kazekage puppet. Jishue looked surprised. 3 generations Kazekage were assassinated by a ninja from their own village? Hyojin said, "It's precisely because the assassination of 3 generations Kazekage and their puppets is too sensational, so I rarely use this puppet after I obtained it. This matter involves too much. It's related to the face of the Sand Crypsis, so please don't publicize it. Otherwise, it's likely to cause conflict between the Sand Crypsis and my." Hyojin dared to use the 3 generations Kazekage puppet, so he wasn't worried that Miko-sama and Jishue would reveal the secret. Miko-sama is the kind of good person who would really dare to perish together with Morio for the sake of world peace. Plus, Miko-sama owes him a big favor this time, so he believes that Miko-sama will not betray him. As for Jishue, first, he believes in Jishue's credibility, and second, Jishue also has a handle in his hands. If it's revealed, no one will have a good result. Taking a step back, Even if the matter of 3 generations Kazekage puppet is leaked, at worst, he will just hand over 3 generations Kazekage puppet to the village. Anyway, it's just a trophy, and he didn't kill 3 generations Kazekage. Listening to Hyojin's serious words, even to the point that it will affect the 2 great shinobi villages of Mai and Sancrypsis, Miko-sama and Jishui hurriedly promised, "We will never leak this matter." Hyojin changed the topic and asked Jishui, "It's rumored that there is another form of Sharingan above the 3 Tomo. Is it the Manjikyu Sharingan you mentioned just now?" Jishui didn't hide anything and said with a smile, "Well, what I just used is a unique Manjikyu Sharingan technique called Susanoo. Exchanging secrets is the fastest way to open each other's hearts." After Miko-sama, Hyojin, and Jishui exchanged each other's secrets, the relationship between the 3 of them suddenly became a lot warmer. After temporarily reinforcing the seal on the wooden box, Miko-sama said, "I'm going to choose a suitable place to seal Morio's soul in the land of demons, so that his body and soul will be separated by thousands of miles, and the possibility of him escaping is very small. Compared to the seal on Morio's body, the seal on Morio's soul is much weaker. So Miko-sama has to choose another suitable place to rearrange the seal array and seal the wooden box in it." For Miko-sama's arrangement, Hyojin and Jishui naturally have no objection. In fact, Hyojin's mind at this time is no longer on Morio. He has already begun to think about how to ask Miko-sama to learn Fuinjutsu from her lineage. From a matter of sealing Morio, Hyojin has already confirmed the strength of Miko-sama's Fuinjutsu lineage. In his view, even if Miko-sama innately restrains Morio, Miko-sama's attainments in Fuinjutsu are far beyond the vast majority of shinobi in the village. Chapter 45. After walking out of the cave, while supporting each other, the first person that entered Hyojin's eyes was Guy. Obviously, Guy faithfully executed Hyojin's instructions and guarded the entrance of the cave the whole time, not allowing the ninjas of Sancrypsis and Rock Village to enter the cave without permission. Seeing that the 3 people in the cave came out safely, Guy showed his signature smile and raised his thumb. "Kuroto, I knew you would succeed." Kakashi, who was not far away, didn't say anything. He was still indifferent and undisciplined, but from the rise and fall of his chest, Kuroto could keenly perceive that Kakashi seemed to be heaving a long sigh of relief. Sancrypsis' Pakura didn't come forward, but stood in the same place, carefully looking at Hyojin and Jishui. The movement inside the cave was felt by the ninjas outside, so everyone can guess how fierce the battle inside the cave was, and the fact that the young Hyojin and Jishui were able to come out alive made her think highly of them. On the other side, the ninjas of Rock Village looked at Hyojin and Jishui with unfriendly eyes. Their captain showed a thoughtful look, as if he was thinking about something important, so much so that he looked a little absent-minded. Feeling the hostility from Rock Village, Suijin immediately understood what was going on. With the complete sealing of the demon Morio, the cooperation between the several shinobi villages has also ended, replaced by the hostility and competition as always. At this time, Miko-sama, who was holding the wooden box, bowed to the ninjas outside the cave and thanked them for their help. Not to mention anything else, just looking at the broken terracotta puppets outside the cave, it is clear that the ninjas guarding outside the cave were not easy. After all, before the Morio is completely sealed, these terracotta puppets can be said to be immortal. After exchanging pleasantries for a while, the group of ninjas escorted Miko-sama back to the land of demons. Then, the ninjas of Sancrypsis and Rock Village left one after another. Because the private deal between Hyojin and Miko-sama has not yet been completed, Mai's team, 11, temporarily stayed in the land of demons under the pretext of being entrusted by Miko-sama to eliminate the remnants of Yomi. Of course, the task of eliminating the remnants of Yomi was thrown by Hyojin to Kakashi, Guy, and Jishui, while he himself was resting in the palace of Miko-sama, waiting for Miko-sama to collect the purple clay for him. In his spare time, Hyojin summarized the battle with Morio. This battle was the first time that Tenseigan exhausted all the chakra in his body after obtaining the Tenseigan. Therefore, this battle exposed a lot of his problems and also gave him some unexpected gains. The side effects caused by the exhaustion of chakra were more serious than he expected. In the next few days, his body could hardly exert any strength, and his spirit felt extremely depressed, as if there was a dark cloud hanging over his head. No matter what he did, he couldn't get rid of it. Fortunately, the pair of Tenseigan in his eye sockets is his own, perfectly compatible with his soul and body, so the burden is much easier to bear. If this pair of Tenseigan was transplanted to someone else, at this moment, I'm afraid that he would have been ruthlessly devoured by the Tenseigan. Even if he was lucky enough not to die, his body probably wouldn't have much vitality left. In the vague memory of his previous life, after Otsutsuki Samurai was defeated by Naruto, the chakra in his body was exhausted, and the Tenseigan he obtained from the Hokubi Kugen also disappeared. From this point, it can be seen that even if Otsutsuki Samurai can fly in the sky, burrow into the ground, and cut the moon after exhausting his chakra, he still can't maintain the level of Tenseigan. The weak are not even qualified to hold the Tenseigan. Therefore, this once again confirmed Hyojin's previous guess. His Tenseigan seems to be very spiritual. It has been instinctively suppressing itself and maintaining the initial awakening state to avoid causing irreversible damage to Hyojin's body. My eyes are still good. After understanding this, Hyojin couldn't help but sigh. The same Rinnegan, Madara, the original owner, and Nagato, the power shown is not the same. Even Madara can use the Rinnegan that Nagato has never used before, which also shows that the original owner of Madara can exert the power of Rinnegan better than Nagato. Moreover, the price paid is far less than that of Nagato. This incident also reminded Hyojin that he would not dare to use up all his chakra in the future. At the same time, it also made him more eager for the artificial tailed beast. Time waits for no man. Hyojin finally couldn't help but ask Miko-sama to learn Fuinjutsu. However, the result disappointed him. Miko-sama clearly told him that if he doesn't have the bloodline of the Miko, he can't learn the Fuinjutsu of the Miko bloodline anyway. This has been verified by countless predecessors. Simply put, the Fuinjutsu of the Miko bloodline is also a kind of bloodline limit. This is why for thousands of years, the Miko of the Land of Demons has only one bloodline, and no outsiders can intervene. Suppressing the disappointment in his heart, Hyojin had to settle for the second best. Although Miko-sama can't teach Hyojin the powerful Fuinjutsu of the Miko bloodline, but as a master of Fuinjutsu, it's not a problem for her to guide Hyojin to learn other Fuinjutsu. After changing his mind, Hyojin immediately extracted all the Fuinjutsu involved in the artificial tailed beast data and handed it to Miko-sama, asking Miko-sama to guide him in learning these Fuinjutsu. As soon as she saw these Fuinjutsu, Miko-sama showed great interest. The Fuinjutsu in the artificial tailed beast data are all Fuinjutsu of the Uzumaki bloodline, and the Uzumaki clan is a powerful Fuinjutsu clan that developed powerful Fuinjutsu such as Go Seal, 4-symbol seal, Diamond Seal, and other powerful Fuinjutsu. So even Miko-sama, who has high attainments in Fuinjutsu, couldn't help but be amazed after seeing the Fuinjutsu of the Uzumaki clan. After a few days of research, with her own attainments in Fuinjutsu, Miko-sama quickly became familiar with the characteristics of the Uzumaki Fuinjutsu and mastered all the Fuinjutsu involved in the artificial tailed beast data. These Fuinjutsu techniques are simply too exquisite. The Uzumaki clan is really admirable. Miko-sama sighed from the bottom of her heart. The characteristic of the Uzumaki clan's Fuinjutsu is that they use the weak to control the strong. Using the weak human body, they use Fuinjutsu to suppress and control a huge monster as strong as the tailed beast. Therefore, since the establishment of my village, the 9 tails Jinchuriki have always belonged to the Uzumaki clan. In this aspect alone, Miko-sama can only sigh in admiration. Chapter 46. Under the careful guidance of Miko-sama, Hyojin learned very quickly. Firstly, the information on the artificial tailed beast has already introduced the principles and functions of these sealing techniques in great detail. Secondly, after obtaining the Tenseigan, Kuroto's comprehension ability has indeed improved a lot. After more than 10 days of study, Kuroto finally mastered all the sealing techniques on the artificial tailed beast's information. After completing the guidance, Miko-sama raised a question. These sealing techniques should be aimed at the tailed beast, right? Knowing that he can't hide it from Miko-sama, Hyojin nodded and immediately asked, "Your Highness, do you think this level of sealing techniques can suppress the tailed beast?" Miko-sama thought for a while and shook her head. "I can't judge this, but the Uzumaki clan's sealing techniques are very exquisite, and in many aspects, they are better than me. Maybe it's possible." Hyojin frowned slightly. "Your Highness sealed Morio, so you should have a strong judgment in this regard, right?" Seeing Hyojin's doubt, Miko-sama smiled and explained, "You misunderstand. The reason why I was able to seal Morio is because my sealing techniques can restrain him. If I were to seal the tailed beast, the result would be very unpredictable. As the two sides of the same body, Miko-sama and Morio have a mutually reinforcing and restraining relationship, so the fight between them can't be used as a basis to judge the tailed beast, even if Morio has reached the level of a tailed beast." After understanding this, Hyojin's brows didn't relax. On the contrary, he frowned even tighter. Previously, he has been using Morio as a reference, and seeing Miko-sama easily seal Morio, he somewhat despised the tailed beast in his heart. But now that he understood the secret behind Miko-sama sealing Morio, he finally understood why the village gave up the artificial tailed beast project. It's most likely because the sealing techniques on the information are not reliable. And things like the artificial tailed beast must be guaranteed to be reliable. Otherwise, it's not a weapon against the enemy, but a ticking time bomb against oneself. After pondering for a while, Hyojin tentatively asked, "Your Highness, have you ever seen a tailed beast?" Miko-sama shook her head. "I personally estimate that Morio has at least reached the level of one tail, or even higher." After a short pause, Suijin asked again, "If you put aside the element of restraint and just focus on the sealing techniques, do you think the techniques I gave you would be able to seal Morio?" Miko-sama thought for a while and replied, "If Morio is in a weakened state, then there's a certain degree of certainty." Hyojin's face turned gloomy when he heard that. Miko-sama thought for a moment and said, "If my needs to seal the inscription tail beast, I may be able to help." "What do you mean?" Miko-sama explained, "The Uzumaki clan's Fuinjutsu is different from my Fuinjutsu. They focus on internal Fuinjutsu, while I specialize in external Fuinjutsu." Hyojin, who had already mastered a lot of sealing techniques, quickly understood. The Uzumaki clan's Fuinjutsu pays attention to practicality. Their Fuinjutsu often works from the inside to the outside, and while sealing, they can also obtain the power of the sealed object. The best example is the Nine Tails' Jinchuriki. Counting from the first wife, Uzumaki Mito, to Uzumaki Kushina, and now to the current Uzumaki Naruto. All of the Nine Tails' Jinchuriki since the establishment of my village came from the Uzumaki clan. And the reason why he chose the Uzumaki clan is precisely because the Uzumaki clan's physique and their Fuinjutsu are the most suitable for Jinchuriki. The Fuinjutsu of the Land of Demons is much more traditional. Their Fuinjutsu is equivalent to isolation and suppression. In terms of subtlety, they are far inferior to the Uzumaki clan, but in terms of stability, they are better than the Uzumaki clan. Thinking of this, Hyojin suddenly came up with a new idea, that is double-layered Fuinjutsu. The first step is still according to the method in the information, using purple clay to create a shell, then using the Uzumaki clan's Fuinjutsu to create an unstable artificial tailed beast. The second step is to use Miko-sama's Fuinjutsu to seal the entire artificial tailed beast in a portable artifact. In this way, the risk of the artificial tailed beast going berserk is greatly reduced. In daily life, There's no need to be on edge all the time. And during the battle, once something goes wrong, he can use the outer seal to suppress the artificial tailed beast in the artifact to prevent it from going berserk. A few days later, Kakashi and the others who went out to annihilate the Yomi cult returned to Miko-sama's palace. This cleanup operation didn't go well, perhaps because of the Morio's Fuinjutsu being sealed. The Yomi cult's followers in the land of demons almost disappeared overnight. Kakashi and the others spent a lot of effort to annihilate some of the followers on the periphery. The injured leader of the Yomi cult is still missing. Regarding this, Miko-sama didn't care too much. Without the support of Morio, the Yomi cult is no different from a wandering ninja group. As long as they are exposed, the land of demons can easily hire ninjas from any of the 5 great shinobi villages to deal with them. Kakashi is still a little worried about this, but he also knows that his team 11 can't stay in the land of demons for a long time. So after apologizing to Miko-sama, he said goodbye and left. At this time, Hyojin also received the purple clay that Miko-sama promised him. These days, Miko-sama used the power of the land of demons to collect nearly a ton of purple clay. Although it cost a lot of money, Miko-sama didn't complain. After all, compared to the life-saving grace, money is really nothing. Coupled with Hyojin and Jishue's repeated promises that they won't leak the fact that Miko-sama and Miko-sama are one and the same, Miko-sama's reputation in the world is protected, so Miko-sama doesn't care about these small details. After saying goodbye to Miko-sama, the 4 members of Team 11 finally set foot on the road back. On the way back, the 4 of them became more and more familiar with each other, chatting and chatting. This mission not only increased their knowledge, but also increased their trust in each other. Even the indifferent Kakashi would interject a word or 2 from time to time. It seems like he has a tendency to integrate into the conversation. The group walked and stopped from time to time, and soon they left the land of demons and entered the territory of the country of bears. There is a star shinobi village in the country of bears, but its strength is not very strong, so there are many wandering ninjas living in the country of bears. There are even rumors that some wandering ninjas are deliberately supported by the rock village of the neighboring land of Earth. Their purpose is to use these wandering ninjas to quietly infiltrate the country of bears and plunder the resources of the country of bears. Walking in a dense forest in the country of bears, Hyojin, who was at the front of the group, suddenly stopped. Guy hurriedly asked, "What's wrong?" Hyojin's face sank. This place seems to be deliberately arranged by someone. Kakashi sniffed and immediately became alert. His nose is very sensitive, and he can smell things that others can't notice. During the Third Shinobi War, he used this ability to detect enemies in advance many times. Boom, boom, boom. Chapter 47. While the 4 members of Class 11 were engulfed in flames, Kakashi used water release ninjutsu. Water release. Water formation wall. Sizzle, the surging water wall collided with the raging flames of the explosion, causing endless steam to rise. For a time, mist filled the surrounding area. Feeling the slight vibration under his feet, Hyojin warned, "Everyone be careful." Before his voice fell, countless sharp earth spikes emerged from the ground and shot toward the 4 of them. With Hyojin's warning, the 4 of them jumped to the trunk of the surrounding trees, narrowly escaping this wave of silent earth spikes. Guy looked around. Where's the enemy? Boom, boom, boom. The only response to Kai was another violent explosion. Affected by the explosion, the 4 members of Class 11 were forced to scatter again, and suddenly the distance between them was pulled apart. The mist around them didn't interfere too much with Hyojin's Tenseigan, but the continuous explosions forced him to move back and forth in the forest. Seeing that he was getting further and further away from his companions, Hyojin faintly guessed the purpose of the attackers. Sure enough, it didn't take long for a figure to appear in front of Hyojin. Hyojin frowned. "It's you." The person who stopped in front of Hyojin was none other than the captain of the Rock Village beheading unit, who cooperated with Hyojin and the others to deal with the demon Morio in the land of demons. Originally, Hyojin also considered looking for trouble with this group of rock ninjas, but thinking that he has more important things to do, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he had to suppress the impulse of revenge. He didn't expect that these people would take the initiative to find him instead of finding trouble with him. The captain of the Rock Village beheading unit smiled and said, "What's wrong, surprised?" Hyojin asked, "I'm a little curious. How did you discover our whereabouts?" From this series of ambushes, it is obvious that the rock ninjas knew the route of Class 11 in advance, otherwise it would be impossible for them to arrange such a perfect ambush. But Class 11 was very careful along the way, and Hyojin used his Tenseigan to check the surroundings from time to time, so he was sure that no one was following them. Squeak, squeak. At this time, a small head popped out from the collar of the captain of the Rock Village's execution unit. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be an ordinary-looking squirrel. Squirrel? Shaking his head, Hyojin immediately thought, "No, this is not an ordinary squirrel. It is a ninja beast." There are many kinds of ninja beasts. It can be said that as long as one can use chakra, any animal can be counted as a ninja beast. This seemingly ordinary squirrel is no exception. It's called Pilu. It can track any familiar scent within a dozen miles. After chuckling, the captain of the Rock Village beheading unit continued, "I know that you are from the Hyuga clan, so of course, I won't follow you personally." Hyojin was slightly surprised. "You remember me?" From the tone of the captain, Hyojin realized that the captain had already recognized him. Obviously, in the battle where Hyojin almost died, not only did Hyojin remember the captain, but the captain also remembered Hyojin, who survived. The captain of the Rock beheading unit put away the smile on his face and said with a calm face, "A year ago, he was just an ordinary kid. I didn't expect him to grow to this point. Konoha's geniuses are really enviable." Hyojin said coldly, "It seems that you are regretting it." The captain of the Rock Village beheading unit gritted his teeth and said bitterly, "Yes, I really regret not killing you at that time. So, I must personally correct this mistake. I will not allow a second golden flash to appear in my... I will be responsible for the village." Hyojin, who is less than 15 years old, can already participate in the battle of tailed beasts. It can be imagined that if Hyojin continues to grow, he will inevitably become another golden flash, which is absolutely intolerable for the Rock Village. Rock Village has never forgotten the humiliation brought to them by the golden flash. Boom! There was a faint explosion in the distance. There is no doubt that the other members of Class 11 also encountered the enemy and fell into battle. Seeing that Hyojin was a little distracted, the captain of the Rock Village beheading unit said, "Don't worry about the others. You kids will soon meet in the underworld. Remember, my name is Iwamoto. I am the one who will kill you." After saying that, Iwamoto clasped his hands together. Earth release technique. Seeing Iwamoto diving into the ground, Hyojin was worried that he would be attacked from underground. So he jumped on a big tree and used the Tenseigan to carefully observe the situation. However, he didn't know if it was because Iwamoto dived too deep, but he didn't find anything. At this moment, not far away, there was a sound of rushing water. Hyojin looked towards the direction of sound and saw a large amount of water rushing towards him like a broken dam. This is water release, great waterfall technique. Although this great waterfall technique doesn't pose much of a threat to Hyojin, he didn't dare to take it lightly. The other party is a famous elite jonin of the Rock Village. It is impossible for him to waste his chakra on the battlefield for no reason. After the impact of the great waterfall technique, the surrounding ground became muddy. The wet ground made Kuroda subconsciously feel that something was wrong. But what exactly was wrong? He couldn't tell for a while. After all, he didn't know much about Earth release. Swish, swish, swish. Suddenly, a lot of thumb-sized mud balls flew out of the muddy ground. These mud balls were like bullets with a sharp sound of breaking the wind, whistling towards Hyojin on the tree. Faced with the densely packed and eyeballs shooting towards him, Kuroda didn't hesitate and immediately used Revolving Heaven. Revolving Sky can protect Hyojin, but it can't protect the tree under his feet. In just a blink of an eye, this towering tree that 3 or 4 people couldn't even wrap their arms around was pierced with countless holes by the mud balls, and in the flying sawdust, it crashed to the ground. Hyojin's feet touched the ground, ready to jump to another tree not far away. But at this time, a few long whips made of mud quickly swept over, wrapped around his legs, and pulled him to the ground. Bang! With a muffled sound, Hyojin fell from the air to the ground. Cough! Hyojin curled up his body and coughed out a mouthful of blood. The fall made him dizzy. Even breathing was a little difficult for him, as if one of the ribs in his chest was broken. Seeing that he succeeded, Iwamoto rose from the ground, revealing half of his body, and smiled. It seems that I overestimated you. Byakugan isn't as strong as I thought. At this time, Hyojin, who was in pain, suddenly raised the corner of his mouth, revealing an expression that seemed like a smile. Chapter 48. In panic, Iwamoto involuntarily flew towards Suijin. Hyojin, who was on the ground, struggled to stand up and used a trigram palm. Bang, bang, bang. Along with the sound of palm strikes, Iwamoto was sent flying by Hyojin's soft fist and fell into the mud not far away. Cough, cough. After a set of soft fist, Hyojin coughed out a mouthful of blood. Although he purposely got hit to lure Iwamoto out, the injuries on his body were not fake. In fact, he did not expect Iwamoto's mud whip to be so powerful. With the help of inertia, he fell from the sky and directly injured his lungs. Even now, he was still feeling dizzy, and his chi and blood were surging. After a while, Hyojin said lightly, "Don't pretend. I know you didn't faint." Iwamoto stopped pretending and jumped out of the mud. He asked in bewilderment, "Kid, what was that move you just used?" Kuroto spat lightly. "Tisk, why should I tell you? It doesn't matter. I will make you say it later." Saying this, Iwamoto slowly pulled out the short sword from his waist. Iwamoto was indeed an elite jonin of the Rock Village. When he was controlled by Rain Pull, he secretly used Earth Release ninjutsu to harden part of his body. Therefore, although Hyojin's soft fist sealed part of his meridians, it didn't cause any damage to his body. His meridians were sealed, but he couldn't use ninjutsu. As an elite jonin, even if he didn't use chakra, he was still an expert in body technique and sword technique. But Hyojin's injury was not light, so Iwamoto felt that he had a big advantage and the situation was still under his control. At this time, Hyojin took out a scroll with the word 3 written on it and summoned 3 generations of Kazekage puppets in front of Iwamoto. Looking at the cloud of iron sand floating around the Kazekage puppets of 3 generations, Iwamoto was stunned. As a ninja who has experienced 2 shinobi wars, Iwamoto's knowledge is far above ordinary ninjas, so with just a glance, he recognized that this is the unique Kekai of the Sand Crypsis, Magnet Release. Exposing the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets in this environment is undoubtedly a very risky thing to do. So Hyojin didn't say any more nonsense and immediately urged the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets to launch an attack. Magnetic evasion, iron, sand, timely rain. In an instant, the iron sand that filled the sky turned into sharp needles and shot towards Iwamoto like raindrops. Clang, clang, clang. The short sword in Iwamoto's hand danced, creating a beautiful flower, accompanied by the ear-piercing sound of metal colliding, unexpectedly blocking the majority of the iron sand. Seeing this, Hyojin frowned. He thought that by sealing Iwamoto's chakra, he would be able to quickly end the battle, but he didn't expect Iwamoto's swordsmanship to be so exquisite. However, a short sword alone obviously can't block the endless iron sand, so after a moment, Iwamoto's limbs and abdomen and other parts of his body were full of iron sand. Iwamoto gritted his teeth and shouted, "Secret technique, blood explosion technique." Blood explosion technique is Iwamoto's unique secret technique. After using it, The chakra's amount in the body will soar, and it can dispel most of the genjutsu, as well as the sealing technique. With the activation of the secret technique, Iwamoto's face became extremely red, as if he was drunk. Subconsciously feeling the danger, Hyojin quickly flew back. At this moment, in the vision of the Tenseigan, the chakra in Iwamoto's body is like a burning flame, surging and violent. This feeling is somewhat familiar to Kuroto. It's just like when Guy is in the state of Hashimoto Tanto. But when Guy is in the state of Hashimoto Tanto, the chakra inside Iwamoto's body is completely chaotic and violent, as if it could engulf him at any time. There is no doubt that this is definitely a secret technique with great negative effects. And often such a secret technique is extremely powerful. It can change the situation of a battle. In just a few breaths, the meridians sealed by Hyojin's soft fist were broken by Iwamoto. Then his hands quickly turned into a series of afterimages. Earth Release, Mud Dragon Bullet. Earth Release, Earth Spear Thrust. Earth Release, Mud Whip Entanglement. With Iwamoto's murderous shout, 3 large Earth Release ninjutsu were launched almost at the same time. For a time, the whistling mud bombs, the silent mud spears, and the crackling mud whips attacked Hyojin and the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets from all directions. In the face of such an omnidirectional attack, even with the Tenseigan, Hyojin is not sure that he can completely avoid it, not to mention that he is injured at this moment, so he can only choose to defend. Magnet Release, Iron Sand Defense. The iron sand in the sky immediately turned into an iron sandball, protecting Hyojin and the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets inside it. Boom, boom, boom. Countless mud bombs, mud spears, and mud whips hit the surface of the iron sandball one after another, making a deafening noise. Inside the iron sandball, Hyojin half squatted on the ground, calmly thinking about countermeasures. An explosive secret technique is bound to be unable to last long. So according to common sense, as long as this drags on, the balance of victory will definitely tilt toward Hyojin's side. But considering that this ambush was carefully arranged by the Rock Village, the enemy may not only be the 4 rock beheading squad that he saw before in the Land of Demons. If there are other rock ninjas involved, then it is difficult to say whether it is good or bad to continue to drag on. After a little consideration, Hyojin decided that even if he has to take some risks, he has to end this battle quickly. After all, the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets are too sensitive. Once the rock ninjas find out, it will be big trouble. After making up his mind, he immediately urged the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets to use their strongest move. Magnet Release, Iron Sand World Technique. More than half of the iron sand in the iron sandball protecting Hyojin was instantly pulled out and turned into sharp iron spears, constantly branching and stretching towards Iwamoto. Seeing countless iron spears stabbing towards him, Iwamoto's ferocious face was filled with madness. He completely abandoned his defense and used the Earth Release with all his strength. It seems that he wants to perish together with Hyojin. Hyojin couldn't judge the real intention of the other party for a while, but at this point, it was too late for him to make any other plans. In a battle of life and death, there is no room for half-heartedness. Almost at the same time, both sides attacks at each other. Iwamoto's entire right shoulder was pierced by the iron spears, and his limbs were also pierced by the forked iron spears. His whole body was like an iron spear. Blood dripped down along the iron spears, dyeing a large area of the mud red. Chapter 49. Impaled on the spear, Iwamoto coughed up blood and said weakly, My premonition was right. You really are a threat. Hyojin covered the wound on his right leg with one hand and supported himself with the other hand. He stared at Iwamoto. From a reaction of the chakra in Iwamoto's body, he still had a strong vitality, so the weakness he showed now was probably just a disguise. Hyojin wouldn't underestimate any elite jonin who had experienced war, so he didn't act rashly. Iwamoto continued to say weakly, Oh, what a cautious guy. Why don't you come up and give me a quick death? Hyojin was suspicious. Is he trying to lure me to him? Not giving Hyojin time to think, Iwamoto suddenly broke away from the iron spear. As if he wasn't injured at all, he suddenly turned around and fled towards the depths of the forest. He wants to escape. Hyojin was startled at first, then thought, I can't let him escape. The secret of the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets couldn't be leaked, so almost subconsciously, Hyojin stretched out his arms towards Iwamoto and used rain pull. Under the huge suction force, Iwamoto almost didn't struggle and was sucked toward Hyojin. Ignoring the injuries on his body, Kuroto used a set of 8 trigram palms with all his strength, and every move was aimed at the vital parts of Iwamoto's body, determined to completely eliminate this strong enemy. Bang, bang, bang. The muffled sound of palm hitting flesh echoed in the forest. From the touch of the palm, Hyojin could judge that this time Iwamoto didn't have time to use the hardening technique of earth release. So even if this set of 8 trigrams palm didn't break Iwamoto's heart, it definitely hurt his lungs. As Hyojin expected, Iwamoto's body was like a pile of mud, slowly falling at Hyojin's feet. Just as Hyojin heaved a sigh of relief, Iwamoto suddenly jumped up from the ground, hugged Hyojin, and said in a hoarse voice, "My young genius, come with me to the underworld." Hiss hiss, with the hissing sound of ignition, Hyojin found out that Iwamoto had modified his body. He had implanted many special explosive charms under his skin and used the flow of chakra in his body to confuse the chakra on the explosive charms. That was how Hyojin could not detect him. Looking at Iwamoto, who was calm even in death, Hyojin suddenly understood. From the beginning to the end, Iwamoto had never thought of escaping. The reason why he pretended to escape was because he wanted to get closer to Hyojin and complete his final attack. Boom, boom, boom. The explosion set off a storm that swept through a large area of the forest. The surroundings were flattened by the explosion. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the earth trembled slightly. In the distance, after using Jinjutsu to kill the last enemy, Jishuei stepped forward and finished the enemy's life. At this moment, there were already 9 corpses lying around him in a disorderly manner. Except for one of the members of the Rock Village's execution unit, the other 8 were dressed like wandering ninjas. It seems that they were the group of wandering ninjas that the Rock Village secretly supported. Just as Jishuei put away his short sword and was ready to look for the other members of the team, 11, a violent explosion suddenly came from the distance, causing him to stagger. What's going on? Taken aback, he quickly rushed towards the direction of the explosion on the other side. Kakashi pulled out his right hand that pierced the enemy's heart and then casually threw the sticky blood on the ground. Then, while gasping for breath, he looked at the direction of the explosion. With his experience, he can naturally judge that an explosion of this scale can't be caused by ordinary ninjutsu or detonation talismans. His face suddenly became gloomy. The fierce battle just now exhausted his chakra. Although he killed all 9 enemies, he almost lost his combat power, but he didn't hesitate and limped towards the direction of the explosion on the last battlefield. Guy covered his injured left arm with a solemn expression. Trapped in a tight encirclement, he was not only worried about the battle in front of him, but also worried about the other members of Team 11. In his opinion, since the enemy sent 9 ninjas to besiege him, then the number of ninjas that besieged his companions would be even more. Suddenly, a violent explosion came, attracting the attention of everyone on both sides of the battle. Guy's heart sank, and he had a bad premonition. On the other hand, the face of the leader of the Rock Execution Unit changed drastically, and he directly left the injured guy and led 8 wandering ninjas to rush towards the direction of the explosion. Guy was stunned for a moment. Then he followed at the center of the explosion. After the dust settled, Hyojin's figure slowly appeared. He glanced around calmly and sighed softly. At the last moment, Hyojin decisively used rain pull to push Iwamoto away. But Iwamoto's explosion was too violent, and rain pull couldn't repel all the shockwaves and flames. So under the impact of the explosion, Hyojin still suffered a lot of injuries. There were many fractures and burns on his body, making him look very embarrassed. Iwamoto's body didn't even exist. Only a broken piece of Iwamoto's forehead protector was left on the ground. Hyojin dragged his injured leg, staggered over, picked up Iwamoto's forehead protector, and put it in the ninja bag on his waist. This battle of life and death, he won. 1 year ago, he was just a nobody in front of Iwamoto, and Iwamoto didn't even want to waste his chakra to use ninjutsu on him. But today, 1 year later, Iwamoto died in the hands of nobody. For a moment, Hyojin was in a trance, and his heart was full of emotion. Kakashi shook his head and said bluntly, "In the entire village, there aren't many people who have a battle record like yours." Hyojin curiously asked, "Why? Is this Iwamoto very famous?" "Of course." Nodding, Kakashi continued, "As far as I know, there are only 7 beheading troops in the Rock Village. One of them was besieged by more than 100 ninjas from our village in the Land of Grass. In the end, both sides almost died together." Guy was surprised. More than 100 of us besieged 4 of them and almost died together. Kakashi's face was serious. "Well, that battle was very tragic. Although we defeated the enemy, in the end, it seems that only 6 or 7 people survived." Jishuei said gloomily, "Several elite jonins of our Uchiha were killed by the beheading troops of the Rock Village." Guy was a little confused. "Then didn't we do something great? By the way, including the one we killed, there are only 5 beheading troops left in the Rock Village." Kakashi shook his head and said, "No, there are only 3 left. The other 2 were annihilated by 4 generations." Hyojin was speechless and muttered, "No wonder Iwamoto is so bitter about 4 generations." During the battle, Iwamoto mentioned 4 generations many times, and it wasn't until now that Hyojin understood why Iwamoto's resentment towards 4 generations came from. Of the 3 beheading troops that were lost, except for the one that was besieged in the Land of Grass, the other 2 were killed by 4 generations. Anyone would hate 4 generations to the bone. At this time, Kakashi said worriedly, "I'm worried that Rock Village will take this opportunity to make a fuss." After eating and drinking, Hyojin leaned to the side and said, "What's there to worry about? We were just defending ourselves. We can't just let them kill us." Guy scratched his head. "By the way, why did they attack us?" Kakashi and Jishuei looked at Hyojin. Hyojin shrugged his shoulders. "Don't look at me. I don't know either. Iwamoto may have some special ability, vaguely aware of something. So he wanted to eradicate Hyojin for Rock Village, to prevent Hyojin from becoming the second Golden Flash of Mai. But how can Hyojin publicize this kind of thing? Once it is spread out, not only will it easily attract the attention of the Rock Village, but it will also easily arouse the suspicion of the Konoha. After all, more than a month ago, Hyojin was promoted from a wartime chunin to a Tokubetsu jonin, and his rapid improvement in strength has already attracted the attention of many people. If it is spread that the captain of the beheading troops of Rock Village is extremely afraid of him and wants to kill him, then the secret of his Tenseigan will be very difficult to conceal. Even now, after knowing the weight of the beheading troops in Rock Village, Hyojin has a headache. Chapter 51. After leaving Naruto's office, the 4 members of Team 11 went home. This S-Class mission took nearly 2 months to complete, and after a series of battles, everyone was exhausted, so the 3 generations gave Team 11 a half-month vacation. After returning home, Hyojin was lying on his bed, carefully recalling the reactions of the 3 generations. From the behavior of Sanim-sama, he could roughly judge that this mission in the Land of Demons was indeed just a coincidence, and there was no element of probing. It seems that I'm overthinking things. If the 3 generations really suspected that I'm colluding with Orochimaru, he could have just taken me down directly. Why would he need to beat around the bush? After calming his mind, Hyojin began to count the harvest of the Land of Demons. Obtaining a large amount of purple clay glue, as well as learning all the sealing techniques on the artificial tail beast, is undoubtedly the biggest harvest for Hyojin. In addition, the friendship with the Miko-sama of the Land of Demons is also not a small harvest. Don't underestimate the Miko-sama of the Land of Demons. Her request for help. Even the 5 great shinobi villages of Mai, Rock Village, and San Crypsis had to respond immediately and send their elites to support her. From this point alone, one can see her prestige in the surrounding countries. Establishing a personal relationship with such a person whose status in the mortal world is comparable to that of a daimyo will be of great help to Hyojin in the future. Not to mention anything else, just the artificial tail beast project alone, Miko-sama, as a Seijutsu master, can help him a lot, providing him with very professional Seijutsu guidance and ideas. The next problem is the source of chakra for the artificial tail beast. As soon as he thought of this, Kuroto's thoughts were scattered. He vaguely remembers the artificial tail beast Zero Tail created by Shino. The source of chakra is a large number of ordinary villagers, which directly leads to the instability and low quality of the chakra produced by Zero Tail. Therefore, when Zero Tail tried to devour Naruto and Sasuke's high-intensity chakra, it was easily overpowered by the other party. As expected, it went berserk on the spot. This lesson also verified Orochimaru's previous suggestion. It was best to have a single source of chakra for artificial tail beasts. Although the chakra that was obtained through everyone's efforts was huge, it was too unstable. It could easily cause the artificial tail beast to go berserk under external stimulation. However, there are only a handful of chakra source in the entire shinobi world. This reminded Hyojin of the monster Wang Liang that was sealed not long ago. In terms of chakra's amount, Wang Liang was enough to be the source of chakra for artificial tail beasts. However, its chakra attribute was too evil, and it also had a strong consciousness like a tail beast. If Kuroto used its chakra as the source of chakra for artificial tail beasts, it would be equivalent to changing its body, replacing its original body with that of purple clay. In essence, there's almost no change. And this thing is not so much an artificial tail beast. It is more like another Morio that has changed its shell. And for Kuroto, it is completely harmful and not beneficial. What Hyojin needs is a chakra source that has no self-consciousness or has very weak self-consciousness. After thinking about it, it seems that the only thing that meets this requirement is the dragon vein in the Land of Wind. In his impression, the chakra attribute of the dragon vein seems to be very gentle. Even an ordinary person like Queen Rorin can control it through the power of her bloodline. More importantly, the dragon vein doesn't seem to have a strong self-consciousness. As long as the method is mastered, people who are not of Queen Rorin's bloodline can use the chakra of the dragon vein. Using it as the source of chakra for artificial tail beasts will undoubtedly greatly improve the stability of the artificial tail beasts. The only problem at present is that the dragon vein in the Land of Wind was sealed by 4 generations a few years ago. If he wants to use the power of the dragon vein, he must first break the seal of 4 generations. 4 generations should be using the Uzumaki clan seal, but I don't know which one it is. Hyojin frowned and pondered. Under the guidance of the Miko-sama of the Land of Demons, although he has mastered the Uzumaki sealing technique, it doesn't mean that he is proficient in the Uzumaki sealing technique. On the contrary, he is currently unable to use any of the Uzumaki sealing technique, let alone a forbidden technique like Corpse Ghost Seal. What he had learned so far was just to follow the requirements of the artificial tail beasts and set up the sealing techniques designed by the Vortex family one by one. As for the chakra circulation technique and the hand seals required to perform the Uzumaki Fuinjutsu, Kuroto doesn't know any of them, and there is no relevant record on the artificial tail beast, so Kuroto doesn't know whether it was originally not there or was erased by Orochimaru. Hyojin thought to himself, "It seems that I need to go to the Land of Wind. Only by going there himself can he accurately determine what kind of sealing technique 4 generations used at the time, and then arrange the corresponding method to break it." In addition, he pondered for a moment. He felt that the Lulon Queen's blood seems to have a great influence on the dragon vein. When he breaks the seal of 4 generations, perhaps he should bring it with him, just in case something unexpected happens. After sleeping for a night, early the next morning, Hyojin didn't stay idle. He took some tools and went straight to the Forest of Death at the edge of the village.